Okay, so welcome back everybody. This is Naresh here. Welcome back and I hope everybody had a great day. So good evening everybody. So we can get started team. I think for a quick recap of what we have done yesterday. So we try to understand about a Git, like how does the developer work on a Git tool and then try to maintain the source code and along with it its version tracking everything. We try to understand how does he maintain his local repository, then how does he collaborate with using GitHub with multiple developers. Then finally, right, we understood that once the source code development is done, the application development is completed, the source code will be available in a centralized repository like GitHub. Now that is where everybody stores it, and then from where we need to take the code and we start have to deploy it, right? That is first part. We understood Git as a source code management tool. How does developer works on it and ensures that the source code is available in the source code management tool for us, right? Once the source code is available, we must take the source code and deploy it into the various environments. But before we deploying it, before we cannot deploy directly a raw code into different servers, like we took an example of whenever we want to install a VLC media player, we just take the executable file instead of a source code of the VLC media player. That is where whatever the programming, whatever the thing which is developed by the developer, the source code need to be converted into an executable file, right? So that is what we do it, and then we learned about something called as Maven as a build tool to help us to build the code into an executable format. Again, we had to repeat the process in a team multiple times. So we thought of automating the build process using a Jenkins. Jenkins as a build automation server, which helps us automate the entire process end to end. As part of the build process, we have various steps involved like compilation, code review, unit testing, code coverage, and then finally the package stop. Now these are all the things team that we learned it, and how do I install Java, how do I install Jenkins, how do I install Maven, all these things that we saw it practically, and then we were able to look into the console, Jenkins console, and we were able to install various plugins, do some configurations, and then finally build our pipeline using various jobs that we built it. Finally, we saw that whenever there is a source code commit happens on the GitHub, the pipeline triggers automatically with the settings that we did it. And then finally, we will generate an outcome of your executable file, nothing but a var file. In our case, yesterday we took it. The project, the Java project that we took it is a Maven Java project, with which we are able to generate some kind of executable file for Java application, which is nothing but your var file, right? Now, this is all what we saw it yesterday. This was a quick recap what we have done yesterday. Now, today we are going to understand a little bit more about it. Okay, a little bit more about it. So once after the var file is ready, what we have to do it, right? Now, the application is ready for deployment, so we must deploy it into various environments. Like you see on my screen right now, just for a quick recap, I just draw this one. Like we see the source code in the GitHub. After that, you see it, we deliver it, or we normally use the Maven on Jenkins to build our application completely. Now this is where we used, or we got it yesterday, something called a sample app var file, nothing but an executable file that we got it. Now, once you have this one team, once you have this one, how do I deploy this var file into an environment? First of all, team, if I want to run a Java application or it kind of a web application, you can think about it. As in the day one session, I told that if I want to deploy a web applications, or how do I ensure that this application is available for the n number of users, right? So we're going to talk about it. So this var file need to be deployed onto a server, a machine first of all, with having an operating system. Then we must have a server called as web server or as an application server, which provides a runtime environment for my application. Like team, if I want to play a movie, I need a VLC media player or any media player I need it to play a movie, right? Now movie is your application here, and the player is nothing but the server we're talking, either a web server or application server. So my application is ready, but if I want to run this application, I need a runtime environment like a player. Like here, the player or the environment is nothing but provided by a server called as web server, which means that team I need to install first of all before I deliver this var file or deploy this var file into a server. Like on the server team, on the server, we must have something, an operating system. First of all, a machine needs an operating system by default for sure. Now, once you have your operating system, right? Once you have option, you normally require Java because this is a Java based application. And to run this application, again, we need a server. Let's say that a Tomcat as a web server, I'm taking it. There are many web servers available, team. There are many web server available. Just taking an example of Tomcat web server to deploy my WAR file. Now, finally, we put our WAR file here, right? That's what we want to do. It means that in order to run my WAR file, which I generated yesterday, right, before I deployed, there will be an environment that must be pre-set up on every environment like QA, dev environment, whatever it may be. These environments must be pre-set up, right? These environments must be pre-set up with all the prerequisites required to run my application, right? This is all the things that we needed to ensure that our application works fine, right? Now, then this is question team here. Now we are going to discuss about a topic. This is just a thing that why do I'm going for that next topic basically. The next topic this we're going to discuss is called as configuration management, right? A configuration management tools such as Ansible or Puppet or Chef. There are many configuration management tools in the market. But why do I have to use a configuration management tool, or what is the purpose of a configuration management tool? Let's try to understand. Now you understood, team, in order to deploy my WAR file, I need this pre-environment setup. So how do I set up these servers with all the configurations required for to run my application? That is what is waiting. We use a configuration management tools. So in simple words, if I want to install Java, or if I want to install Tomcat, or even if I want to deploy my application, I can use a tool called as a configuration management tool, which helps me to install or upgrade or whatever it may be. Any change that you want to do to a system, we can use this one. Right, so this is where it is. Just getting you to the concept actually today we are going to discuss is called as configuration management. Configuration is management is all about changing something on your system or any system or a computer or a server, that we call it as a configuration management team. Again, what is a change? Changing something. I said, what exactly is a change if you think about it? So any action that we do it, that we perform on a system or a server that alters the state of a system called as a change. Simple words team, once after you log into your EC2 instance, yes, like yesterday also we installed something called as git. Means earlier there was no git, we installed git, that is called as a configuration change. Later we installed Java, that is also called as a configuration change, right? That we install Jenkins, we install Maven, all those things are considered as changes that are happening to your server basically in simple words. That is what. So in simple word team, a change is nothing but a creating or modifying or deleting of files or directories on your system, installing or deploying a new software or deploying an application, that is also considered as a change, right? Upgrading a software is also considered a change, right? Uninstalling the software is also considered as a change. So anything that you do it once after you log into a server team, a machine basically, that thing is considered as a change, right? Now, so any change that is done on a system server, simply we call it as a configuration change. Also the configuration being altered from one state to other state on that particular system, that is called as your configuration change. Now how do I do this configuration changes, right? How do I do these configuration changes, or why do we need the configuration management or configuration management tools in real world, right? When you go for the realistic organizations, people do use something called as configuration management systems or configuration management tools. But why do we need them? Because I can simply log in and I can make configuration changes simply, that is possible for me. But why do I need a tool here, right? If you try to understand team, if it is easy to make the changes in one or two systems for you, again that is very simple understanding. But in real time we have to do the similar changes across thousands of servers or hundreds of servers at least. Think about it. Let's say if the facebook.com application is available 24/7 without impacting or without giving any errors for you, which means that the Facebook application would be running across n number of servers, right? Because if one system goes down, we never know that when my system goes down because of some issues. Computers are tend to go errors, and they may crash sometimes. But how does my Facebook application is running 24/7 without any interruption, without any downtime, without any issues on the application? That is where Facebook application might have deployed into hundreds of servers. Even one or two servers goes down in between, they're able to help. The application is still available for you with the other systems that are available. Now that is where team, when you want to implement this configuration changes, right? Now in my case right now, I want to install the Java across 1,000 servers. I want to install the Tomcat across another 1,000 servers. How do I do this? Now that is where team, that is where we need to automate something. We cannot do it manually for sure. The manual intervention should be very less, because manual intervention always gives you error prone mechanisms or error prone things we can do it, or it is also time consuming process basically when you go for a manual changes. Now that is why team, we need a tool that helps us to implement these changes across the systems with ease, right? Now that is where the configuration management tools comes into the picture. That is where configuration management tools comes into the picture. They help us automate the automate the instruction, automate the entire the things what you want to do it, whatever you want to do it on a system, that will help you automate it, simply we call it. So automate it is write a script maybe and then execute it. That script goes to the target systems and start executing it or start implementing the changes accordingly. Now that is what it is team. So that is why we need the configuration tools. That is the reason we need a configuration management tool, which helps me to automate, which helps me to implement a change, which helps me to make any change on a target system or any number of target systems easily. No matter what, how many systems you will have it, configuration management tool will help me to do that changes easily, so that it is a mandatory thing that we must use it. Now that is one team. Again, we understood that once my application is ready, but I have to have the environments ready to deploy my application in order to make sure that my servers are ready, and I need to ensure that my application can be deployed. So I must use a tool to set up these environments first of all, then we can deploy our application. And that is why team, I'm introducing you to this configuration management tool here. Let's say that a configuration management tool we are going to discuss is called as Ansible. There are many tools in the market. Again, I'm telling you, there are many tools in the market. Like you have Puppet, right? Puppet, Chef, you have it, right? You have something called as Salt. There are many tools, right? There are many tools in the market, but we are discussing about a tool called as Ansible. Ansible as a configuration management tool, which is the way, in the DevOps world right now, we are discussing about this tool much about it. Now, this is the simplest one team out of all the configuration management tool. This is the simplest one, easily understandable, easily, you don't need to have a great knowledge on anything to write this automation with Ansible. That's how it is easy. It is a human friendly scripting that we write it. So it will be easy for you to understand, easy for you to implement the changes with Ansible accordingly. Now, when it comes to the Ansible architecture team, that's what we're going to do it now. Now, how does Ansible help me to implement the changes is that now any configuration management tool, the funda is same thing, or the motto is same thing here. We need to sit at one location and implement the changes across a number of servers. Because I thought that logging into every server and implementing a change becoming a tedious task. So instead of doing or logging into all the systems, I need to write an automation, the script or the automation tool that will help you to log into the target systems and implement the changes accordingly. Like I'm sitting at my home and I'm able to talk to you all. The tool, a GoToWebinar, is helping us to do this one accordingly. Similarly, the Ansible also going to do it, or we will take a machine basically, or we'll take a server and we would install that Ansible tool or Ansible server on a single machine. Now that machine will be called as Ansible controller team. That machine will be called as your Ansible controller, right? That is what you see it. Now the question is that how does my Ansible will be able to log into my target systems, right? Now, let's say that I installed Ansible. Now using Ansible, I want to perform a change on my target system. The target system is our team. Wherever you want to implement the changes, the target system can be anything, any type of operating system. I don't care about it, but still you want to implement a change on the target system. So target or a target nodes are nothing but the real environments like production or development or queue environment. That is what you think about it. Now within that, I want to install Java right now or install Tomcat. So how does Ansible will be able to log into the target system? Because instead of you logging in now, the tool should log in there. Once you log in only, you can implement a change there. So how does my Ansible going to log into that particular system? It is going to use the same protocol as you are using team. Like we discussed about something called as SSH protocol that will help you to log into a remote Linux machine. Like you're using git bash, using SSH-i something that is called as SSH protocol, using your key and then username, Ubuntu username and the key file. It is logging into the target system. So instead of you triggering manually, we can give that information to the Ansible. Ansible also can use the default username information and a key file or another SSH keys we can create it. Those things will be used to log into the target system. Once it logs into the target system, it is going to implement or do any change automatically for you. Now that is why team, that is what we call is going to use a protocol called SSH. Now team, if you observe something, we installed Ansible only on one machine. This is the machine which I'm installed at. This is the only machine we are installing Ansible related software. Now I did not tell that anything to be installed on my target systems. The target system need not do anything related to Ansible here. So that is why we call that Ansible architecture is known as an agentless architecture. Without any agent on the target system, Ansible can implement a change on the target system, right? That is the reason we say that it is agentless architecture team, whereas rest every other tool in the market needs an agent to be running on the target system. Now this is the simplest tool which does not require many resources to run it. That is why it is becomes a very popular nowadays in the DevOps world. So which helps us implement the changes with ease without any burden on the systems. That is why people are preferring to use this tool accordingly. Now this is called as, it is going to use SSH protocol to login. It is called as agentless architecture, and it is also known as a push model architecture team, because we write the automation on my controller machine and then we push the instruction. They said I want to copy something, I write an instruction or I write some command on my controller, that will be pushed onto the target system and it will start installing the things accordingly, or whatever the task you asked to do it, it will do it on the target system accordingly. Now that is the purpose team. That is what it is called as your no, that is what it is called as your Ansible push model architecture, again agentless architecture or push model architecture we call it. Now this is how team Ansible will help you to log into the target system and will help implement some changes automatically. But the question is that now how my Ansible knows, or Ansible controller machine knows about the target systems on which it has to implement the changes. Now that is where team Ansible controller, or you need to give some information to the controller machine or Ansible machine. That is called as an inventory file. Inventory file is nothing but a file that has the target machine information like IP address. Like you use an IP address to log into the target machine, like you use an IP address, username and password, or username and things accordingly. The Ansible also requires the same thing. The username and password you are providing anyway, I told you. Now it also requires the IP address of the target machine. Now we need to create an inventory file on my controller machine, within which we're going to mention the target system IP addresses, so that Ansible knows, or whenever you run an Ansible command, Ansible looks out for a default inventory file configuration, and it will try to log into all those target machines which is within the inventory file using SSH username and password that you provide to the Ansible controller accordingly. We'll show you all those things accordingly team, whatever the user we're going to use it, how do we share the SSH keys accordingly, everything. We will use all those concepts, but this is what it is, right? Now finally team, now Ansible knows how to log in, Ansible knows where to log in, but how do you write your Ansible automation? What are the ways that you can write Ansible instructions so that Ansible can understand what you are saying to it? Ansible can implement that on the target system. Now that is where team Ansible gives you two type of implementation, that is called as your ad hoc implementation and a playbook implementation, right? When I say ad hoc implementation team, let's say that I want to quickly create a file on the target system, just a create file. It's a single task, right? Single instruction that I'm giving it, for which I don't need to write a big script. I can simply use ad hoc command, we call it. It's a command line syntax, just going to be executed immediately so that it will perform on the targets. Like whenever you think about a single task, I don't need to write a script for it, a big script like containing a file, set of instruction, everything. No, that is not the way. Ad hoc is that a single instruction that you want to run it on the target system. That is where we use ad hoc commands of Ansible. Now whenever you want to install, or whenever you want to perform a series of tasks, let's say that I want to log into the target system, create a file, install Java, then install Tomcat, then start my Tomcat server, then validate something, then come out of the server. These are the series of tasks that I want to perform. In that case, I cannot write a single instruction for it, so I have to write the instructions in a script. Now that script we call it as a playbook. So playbook is a script team where you put a set of instructions and you will give to the Ansible, and Ansible takes that all set of instructions and takes it and starts executing on the target system accordingly. And usually we use a YAML syntaxing to write these instructions accordingly. I'm not sure how many of you are aware of a YAML here, but I'll explain it whatever is necessary for you guys. So, but YAML is one of the very important here to write it. And YAML is a very friendly language, not like any HTML or XML kind of stuff. But YAML is a very, very simple one to understand accordingly. Now, this is how it is team. So you can use either a playbook or ad hoc command. But how do I write it? I know Ansible is helping you to implement a single task or multiple tasks using ad hoc or playbook way. But how do I write my Ansible instructions still? That is still a question for you. Now that is where team Ansible help you to implement the changes using a predefined modules. Ansible comes up with a predefined modules or predefined syntaxing structure, everything. You must use that predefined modules only. There is no other way. You just have to use that predefined modules which is given by the Ansible. Now, if you go to Ansible documentation, you will find an example for every module that is available within the Ansible. We will simply use those modules and then start implementing the changes on my target system. So likewise, team, if I want to use a copy, means if I want to copy something, I can use a copy module. If I want to create a file, I can use a file module. And if I want to use or run or restart a service, I can use a service module. Likewise, team, there are n number of modules which are provided by the Ansible by default. You just need to read through the documentation based on your requirement. What is the task that you're performing on a system for which there will be an appropriate module which will be given by the Ansible. You must use that Ansible, use the examples given by the Ansible within the documentation. If you don't know how to write it also team, it will be easy for you to look at an example. It is easily understandable. It is easily implementable accordingly. Now that is what it is called team. This is how the Ansible works for us. In simple words now team, we're going to take one server where we'll be installing Ansible software, and we will use a couple of servers as a target servers in which we will be implementing the changes using the Ansible controller. So first of all, we need to get 3 EC2 instances team. I know yesterday or day before yesterday we created one instance where we used it for Git and Jenkins server yesterday. That's absolutely fine. But today team, we're going to set up a 3 more servers within our AWS accounts itself, right? And then you can use the same way to log into that particular system. We're able to log into the servers, we will try to implement the changes using Ansible. First thing team, we need to prepare the controller server. We will install Ansible there and we'll try to set up an SSH communication between the controller machine and the target machines. Once that setup process is completed, we will start implementing the changes accordingly. That is what the motto team, that is what we're going to use it accordingly. Okay, so this is how team we're going to use it. So let me switch on. Great. So this is what it is team. So this is all about it. So this is just an introduction that I'm giving it to you guys today. This is how it is. Let's jump on to the practical team. I hope you're all clear on this one so far, whatever we told you. We are discussing about something called as configuration management. Why do we need configuration management? What is configuration management exactly? Now we are also introduce you to Ansible as a configuration management tool. What is the architecture of Ansible? All right, and then we try to implement this one practically. Now let's jump on to the practical team. Let me show you that. Let me show you that here. So coming to the AWS team, I think this is where I'm just showing you my account. Like you, in your account also team, you must create a multiple servers, right? Yesterday Jenkins server team, I still keep it as it is, so we can use that later again. But I created another 3 instances, as you everybody see it here. Everybody seeing it. Now there is one machine which I'm calling it as Ansible controller, where I'll be installing my Ansible software. So let me log into this machine first of all, and then we'll try to use it accordingly, right? So let me log into this machine team. The same way we're going to log in it using a git bash. So the first instance team, let's say that here ssh-i the devops.pem and ubuntu this one. So this is how team I'm logging into my server, first server basically. Once this server is done, right, I'll switch to the root user. Now consider this one team, this screen what you're seeing is now I'm going to call it as my Ansible controller, because I'm going to install my Ansible software here. I will show you the instruction. Now just to differentiate team, just to differentiate this screen for you, I'm just using a different color for this screen, so which is going to be little yellow color, right? Let's say that now wherever you see the yellow color text team, that is considered as your Ansible controller. Using this one, or we will be sitting on this machine and we'll try to install or do some changes on the target servers accordingly. Now let me log into the other two target servers also where we want to implement the changes. Let's say that here I'll open another git bash prompt. You can open multiple terminals for your git bash team like this, and you can log into different instances at once. Let's say that I'm gonna log into my target node 1, which is this IP address. Here it is. Now ssh-i devops.pem and ubuntu @your IP address. So this is a second server team for me, which is going to be white color only. So this will be target node for me. Now let's say that I'm going to log into my third instance also, this one, using a different type address, and I'm going to open git bash again one more time, right? ssh-i devops.pem ubuntu @yours file. So this is how team we can simply log in to all the machines in parallel, right? Once that is done, so let's try setting up our Ansible server and all these things, team. Let's say that here I'm gonna use it. This is my Ansible controller machine, which is yellow color text. Now this is the second machine, which is a target node where I want to implement some changes. Now this is my third node where I logged in. This is my third node where I logged in. This is my, these two are the team, the white color screens which are using on the top. This is going to be my target machines where I'll be implementing some changes, but I will not do something here, but I'll do it something from the controller machine directly. Now, first of all, team, we need to set up an SSH communication, install Ansible and set up an SSH communication. Once that setup communication is done, that is one time setup that is going to be done. After that, you can do the changes as long as the servers are available for you. So let me show you, team, first of all, how do I install Ansible software on my controller machine. So I think the repository that we shared with you guys, please go to that repository that we shared already for you. If you go to the Ansible folder within the repository, right, now there you will see something called as install option, team, install this one. Now here it is. You can see that the installation instruction on Ubuntu Linux. You can use these things basically. You can use these things. Let's say that here I'm running the same instruction here. So just do an apt-get update and use this prerequisite for installing Ansible software. I'm running only this on the controller machine, team, because we install Ansible only on one machine, right? That is going to be called as your Ansible controller, controlling all the configurations of target systems from one system accordingly. Now let's say that the repository from which we want to download the Ansible software. Now once that is done, team, we can simply install Ansible, apt-get install Ansible. That is what all we're gonna do it. Now this is how, team, I've converted or I installed Ansible on one machine, or installing Ansible on one machine. Now this will be called as your Ansible controller, right? So using this machine, we want to implement some changes on the target server. Now once you install the Ansible, team, the first and foremost thing is that we need to set up a communication, how my Ansible tool will be able to log into the target server. That setup need to be taken care first of all. Once that is taken care, we will try to implement the changes accordingly. Let's say that, team, Ansible has been installed successfully right now. You can see that there were no errors here. Let's say that Ansible -- version is a command to check your version of the Ansible. See that, team, it says that Ansible version, which is 2.9.11, is installed successfully right now on my machine. Now there is a default configuration location, it tells you, right? This is the one, etc Ansible is something location where the default configurations of your Ansible exist. We can use the default configurations, right? We can use the default configurations, or we can override the default configurations if required. If I go to this particular folder, team, if I go to this particular folder, you will see the default Ansible configuration. Now there is, along with that, there is a default host file, see it. Now this is where, team, this is called as an inventory file, in which you need to mention the target server IP addresses, so that Ansible can use this file to make sure that it will log into the target system, right? We will prepare this inventory, team. First of all, we need to take care of a communication. How does my Ansible will be able to log into the target system? Now that is where we must create a username with which it can log in, because you can use the default Ubuntu also, but I don't want to use that. You can set up your own usernames, and you can set up your own SSH keys with which it can log into the target system. Like Default key is provided by the Amazon to you, like a default PEM file and default user called as Ubuntu. That is provided to you by the IBM. I don't want to use those default things, but I want to set up my own stuff basically. Let's say that how do I set up that? Now that is where team I have the same instruction here, which is called as SSH key setup. Now I have written a very clear instruction here. How do you need to set up your SSH keys? First of all, then after that, we're going to do it accordingly. First of all, it says that create a user on all the machines, including controller plus all the target machines. So let's say that we're going to use this user add command team. This is a standard Linux command to create a user. So let me use this one. I'm creating a user called as Ansible user. The username itself is called as Ansible. If you're confusing with this name, you can use another username also. Just replace the username with any other username you want it accordingly, right? Let's say that the username I'm creating is Ansible team. Let me create this one. A user add command will help you to create a user on a Linux machine. I'm just creating this one. First, I created on my controller, and I'm also going to create on my target machines, which is mandatory, so that we can use a common username for all our automations. That's what we're doing it. Now the second instruction team, sometimes if you want to install something on a target system, you might need a root privileges or administrator privileges, for which your user should be able to run as an administrator or run as a user, root user we call it. Now for which team we are adding the user to the sudo or root privileges. That is what all I'm doing it. So with this command team, we are providing the Ansible user as a administrator privileges on your systems accordingly. Now this can be done on the target machines itself, because we're going to implement the changes on the target machine only always. So we can run simply on the target machine. On the target machine one, I'm just providing the Ansible user administrator privileges or root privileges we call it here. And here also I'm just doing it accordingly. Now this is how team we set up the things. Now once after you this one, now which is called as generating SSH keys right now, like your Ansible or Amazon provide a PEM file that is called as SSH key, using which you are able to log in. Now here team, the process a little bit different to do it. First of all, you need to generate SSH keys for the user on the controller machine, because controller machine wants to log into the target machines. So we need to generate an SSH keys on the controller machine for the user we created. So when we start, we switch to the user that we created here using a command called as su-ansible on the controller machine team here. Just follow this carefully. On the Ansible, so we switched from the root user to the Ansible user. That is what you do it. Now once you switch to the Ansible user, run a command called as SSH keygen. This is the default program that comes with the Linux team. You need not to worry about it. So run this command called as SSH keygen. This would generate some SSH keys for your user, right? So for this user, instead of a password, we can use the keys to log in, just like you're logging into your Amazon instance. Now you do not need to enter any details. It is prompting team. Just enter again. So it will going to generate some keys here. Let's say that if I do ls-al, now you see something called as a .ssh folder here. Let's say that go to the .ssh folder. Now within which team you will find a public key as well as a private key. These are called as these keys, SSH keys is call it. Now you generated your keys team. Let's say that cat this command or public key, basically use this one. Now you'll see that this is the public key basically, which can be shared with your target systems, so that this controller machine will be able to log into the target system. While it is logging in, it will use this credit, or if it is available on the target systems, the target system will not ask you any key again and again, a password again. So it will simply do it accordingly, right? So this is what we're going to do it. Now this is the same process. I have it here. The fourth step, copy the SSH keys from Ansible controller to all the target hosts. That is what we're doing it. So on the control team, once after you run this one on my Ansible controller, we went into the folder called as this one, cd home ansible.ssh. That is what I did it already. Simply here you can run the commands again. You are already in that folder itself. Sorry, right? So here it is. I'm using. So you're already in that folder itself. You can see that I'm in the home ansible.ssh folder, and within which you have a .pub file. That is what says that cat.pub file, right? Now the copy the content it says for you. Let's say that I'm going to the controller machine, copy the content, right? Whatever the content here, ensure that you copy it carefully, team. Copy it carefully and make it copy to the notepad. Okay, make a copy to the notepad. Ensure that it is in a single line. Don't use unnecessary spaces may come up. So ensure that it is properly copied. It very careful. If it mistakes sometime team when you copy paste it, copy paste errors may arise it. So be careful about it accordingly. Now, once you run that one team on my all target machines right now, on my all target machines, you need to switch to the root Ansible user again. So let me use this command again to switch to Ansible user on my target machines. Here, I'll go with this. Yes. Now here, I'll go with this, right? Now I logged in or switched to the user called as Ansible. Now, once after this one is team, I'm running a command called as this one. I'm creating a folder for my things. And this is a one-time setup team. Of course, this is also automatable, but right now for your understanding, we're using all the manual steps. So try to understand this. We are creating a file called as authorized keys, which means that whenever Ansible user from the controller machine logs in, it will use this authorized key file to ensure that it is able to authenticate here to get into the server accordingly. Now this file should have enough permissions team. You must update the permissions also accordingly. chmod, right? This is a file permission update that we are doing it on the target systems, which will help you to log into the system properly accordingly. Now, once you have this one team, this is set up accordingly. You must modify this file on the both controller machines. Let's say that VI is the editor here, which help you to modify this file. Now I'm using this command on my first system, right? It will open the file in a read-only mode. You can press I keyword to get into the writable mode. Now similarly, let me log in here also and do this one, right? Now here team, we are in the writable mode right now, and you can copy the key team. Let's say that whatever you copied in the notepad, ensure that you copy it carefully and paste it within this machine here, right? This one saved it and save the file accordingly, right? Now let's say this one here also, I'm going to use the same thing, right? And let's say that I save the file accordingly. Now this is how team you generated an SSH keys for a user called as Ansible, and you log into the target systems. I know you ensure that you copied the key here successfully. With this setup team, my controller machine should be able to log into my target systems without asking anything there. Now just to validate that team, let me show you how do I do it right now. So here it is team, let me get the IP address from my target system, which is hostname -I, right? You can get the host IP address team. This is a private IP address. Basically, you normally use a public IP to log in. You can also use the private IP address internally from controller to this one team. These are all internal things we call it. We can still use the public IPs also, but I would recommend to use a private IP addresses of your instances. That will be unique and they will not change it again and again, because when you reboot your EC2 instances, the public IP address may get changed. So you will lose your IP address things accordingly. It's better that you use your private IP addresses always to log into the systems accordingly. Now here it is team. So what I'm taking as this is the one. I just want to validate my SSH key is working or not. SSH, I'll say that Ansible. I'm just trying to log in as an Ansible, like you used Ubuntu at the rate IP address. Now I'm using something called as Ansible, right? Ansible and the IP address of the target system. Look at this one team. This is a 96 IP address. Now when I use this one, since we already copied the SSH keys, it should not ask me for the password or anything else. Just say yes once here. Now you see that team, I'm able to log into my 230 server successfully, right? Now this is how team, you can see that now Ansible controller is able to log into the target system using SSH username and the key that you created successfully. Now let's validate the same thing to the other system also team, the second controller, second target machines. To come out of this machine team, you can simply do a logout here. Now you will go back to your controller machine again where you install your Ansible. Now let's say that I'll go to the second target machine. Let's validate we are also working fine here. Let's say that host name -I. This is 131 team. You can see that. Now I'll use the same thing here also. The same command SSH. I'll replace this IP address here, right? This is just for the validations team I'm doing it, but we are not really doing it. The implementation, you can see that I'm able to log into 131 also successfully, without any password here. Now this is called as your password-less authentication team, or with password with SSH keys. That is what we call it. Now Ansible can log in with the same usage, whatever you gave it right now. Just you logged in manually using SSH command. Now whenever you run an Ansible command also, Ansible also hits that one. By default, it will use the username and will use the keys log into that one accordingly. So this is how team we can set up the SSH keys. This is what we've done, taken care right now. Now from now onwards team, you must run your Ansible, you must run your Ansible commands. I'll tell you how to run them. Must run your Ansible commands with your Ansible user only, so that it will execute on the target systems accordingly, right? So let's try to look at this one team right now. So we have set up the SSH keys and we validated that our controller machine is able to log into the target system without any password using the SSH keys that we set up successfully. Now, once you're done with us team, now we're going to use this Ansible tool. We haven't used the Ansible tool yet team. We just set up SSH keys, that's all. Now we're going to make use of our Ansible configuration management tool to implement the changes on the target system. Now, how do I use that accordingly, right? Now, this is where team, this is where first and foremost thing is required for your Ansible is that your inventory. Now, we already configured a username, which is Ansible user. So we are running the commands as Ansible user. So it is going to take the username as Ansible only. The password or SSH keys have been already shared with the target system. So Ansible knows already the username, or it will use the username that you are logged in as, and will going to use SSH keys on the target system. But where do I mention the inventory here or the target system information is that we call it as an inventory file. Now we saw that team there was a default configuration given by the Ansible already, which is etc Ansible, right? Now within this one team, the Ansible here, look at it. Now this is where the inventory file is available for me. Now if you want to modify this file team, you can modify it. But first of all, you need enough permissions, right? What I would suggest team here, what I would suggest in real time also, we suggest that you need to make a copy of this one, because these are the configurations. If you mess it up with this one, Ansible tool will not work properly, because that is the reason, Dave, if multiple people are using your Ansible controller, this is not a recommended approach to modify the default configurations always. Instead we're going to use our own configurations, right? I want to make a copy, is that I'm going to my own home folder team, which is home Ansible folder, which is my own home directory where I want to do it. Now I'll make a copy of these files. Let's say that cp etc Ansible, right? Let's say that the host file is what I'm creating it, current folder. Now I'm creating this one team. This is what all I'm doing it, right? So here it is team. Now let's provide it, modify this file here, right? Let's say that vi host is a file. We are modifying the file here. Now creating this file team, this is just showing you the information. How do you prepare an inventory? You can read through these commented lines. Everything is a commented line team. We can comment something within an inventory file using a hash mark, right? But I'm going to delete all these things team which I do not require. I'll make this file empty. Now I'll tell you how do I put the inventory here simply, right? Get into the writable mode team, right? Get into the writable mode, and let's say that I units need to copy the target system IP addresses. Let's say that I'll take this IP address and I'll paste it here, right? Similarly team, you can take another system IP address, whatever it may be, and use this one and paste it here. Now this is how team you could prepare your inventory simply, that we call it. Whatever is there now, you just mention all the IP address of the target system. Right now we have only 2 target system, but in real time if you have 100 servers, mention all 100 server IP addresses in this file. If you have 1000, you have to mention everything within this file accordingly, so that Ansible going to recognize this file default. We will give this file as information to it. Now it will start ensuring that it will implement the changes accordingly, right? Now once you have the inventory ready team, now we are ready and set to go, or set to implement the changes using Ansible tool. We have configured a user, we have configured SSH keys, we have prepared inventory. Now everything is set for me to work with Ansible. Now let's see that how do I write my Ansible instruction, right? Now that is where we say that we're going to use ad hoc command or a playbook. First of all, we'll start with ad hoc commands team. We'll try to understand a couple of ad hoc commands. Then using that modules, we're going to implement some changes on the target system. Then we will try to understand about the YAML files accordingly, right? How do I write a YAML file, or the way you want to implement the YAML files, we will try to understand them accordingly. Now team, let me show you how do I do it. The basic Ansible command that we showed always is that Ansible, whenever you want to run a command with Ansible team, this is all command line only. Don't expect a UI here. Everything we have to do it on the command line completely. Now this is all the command line I'm giving you. Ansible is a command which we can use it. So far we didn't use it. So all, if I say all team, which means that all the inventory or all the IP addresses within the inventory file. but which inventory file, right? You must provide the inventory file also here. -I, you can provide that home Ansible host file here. Now this is my inventory, right? Within this inventory file, all the IP addresses -M ping it. Now ping is a simple module team that I'm telling it. A ping is a simple module which will go and ping the servers, or Ansible try to communicate with the target systems, whether it is able to communicate with it or not. Like you do a ping command, it will get a response for you if it is a ping is working or not. We just validate. Now let's do this one team. Now, when you hit this command, if it is giving you a successful response, that means that your Ansible is able to communicate with the target system simply, right? We didn't implement any change, but whether my Ansible is able to communicate with the target system or not, I just validated. We say that a success response, which means that Ansible is able to communicate with the target system, so that I could simply do this one. Now, with this understanding team, we can start implementing the changes on the target system. I don't need to log into the target system right now, it's manually, but Ansible will be logging into the target system. It will start creating the files, or it may start creating a copy of file accordingly, whatever it is. Now, the first and foremost, a basic example team I'll tell you here. Now, the module team, look at this one. The command we used is called as -M. -M stands for module here. This is the module name which is provided by the Ansible. Ansible provides the predefined modules, as I said. This is the predefined module given by the Ansible to write this code accordingly. Likewise, team, likewise, you have n number of modules for Ansible. Just to show you that one, let's say that there is a command called as Ansible doc-l. List the documentation of my Ansible to show me the modules which are available here. Look at this one team. There are many modules here. It will display that many modules here. These are all the modules which are available, but you must know what is this for and how to use that accordingly. For example, let's say that I want to know about a module called as copy. Copy is a simple module team. I want to copy a file to the target system. Or let's say that I want to know about a file module which will help me create a file on the target system. Simply say that team Ansible doc file is a module name. Just hit this one. Now you will see the information about it, which is called as a file is a module. Set attributes of files, symlinks directories, alternate remove files, symlinks directories, or many other modules support the same options. File module is going to let you create, or it is going to provide some set of predefined, values to set these things accordingly. How do I create a file on the target system and everything? Now these are all things team, you can see it, basically information about that particular thing, right? You have it right now. Particular module, this is how the documentation will be provided to you. I can see even the example. How do I write the code here? We will try to understand this, but this is a YAML way of writing it. But before that, let's try to execute a command here. How do I create a file? Let's say that Ansible, right? Again, I'm doing it on all the target systems using the inventory file called as home Ansible host file, right? Now I want to use a module called as file -M file, right? Now when I say file module team, which file you want to create it on, which path you want to create it. Let's say that I'm going to use attributed or arguments for my file module. That is where I'm seeing it here. Like this team, let's say that the path I'll give it. These are all predefined team. Again, I'm telling you, you must know them. So path is something which I'm telling it. Let's say that temp nourish.txt file is what I want to create it. Now team, the file module can be used to create a file or delete a file. Similarly, it also can be used to create a directory or a delete a directory also. You must say that whether you're creating a file or creating a directory here. Or let's say I want to create a directory. Let's say that state I'm giving it. State is equals to directory I'll give it, which means that I'm asking my Ansible to create this directory on the target systems accordingly. Under the temp folder, I'm creating a directory called as Naresh named directory, or a folder you call it. That is what we're trying to do it. Now let's enter this one team. We'll try to look at the output. See that it says that something got changed. Now I'm not logging into the target system team at all. With Ansible itself, I did something called as temp Naresh folder. Let's go ahead and validate this one onto the target system here. Let's say that under the temp folder, this is where I created a directory called as Naresh. You can see that Naresh is created just now. I will show you the time here. See this team, this is 1622. Now just now you can see that 1622. Just now we created this file accordingly, right? Now this is how team we can understand about without logging into a system manually. Ansible tool can automatically log in. It can automatically do something what you want to do it on the target system. Now this is the purpose of whole configuration management team. In simple words, sit at one location and manage the configurations of entire infrastructure. Infrastructure is nothing but thousands of servers within your data centers. You have it accordingly, correct? Now this is how you do a team. Similarly, you can validate on the third system also if you would like to, because it does parallel team on all the systems. It does it. You can see that here also it is created. Now question is that, again, if I want to validate it, it implemented some change, that's absolutely good. But if I want to target or validation this thing, I do not need to log into the things also. Let me show you here how do I validate it. Let's say that team, I went into the server, I ran a command called as ls-l type folder like that. Now the same command I can give it to Ansible itself to validate it according, but we need to use a different module to execute a normal shell commands basically. Let's say that Ansible, again I'm giving you all -i home Ansible host file. Now let's say that team -m shell module, I'm using it to run a shell command like ls-l or list commands basically. ls-l/dem folder, right? This is all the command I'm running it. I don't need to log into the target system to validate whether it's created or not, right? What is missing here? Okay, it is an argument team. We must miss the argument option here. Means we are passing an argument to the shell module, so we must give a -a here. This is the argument we call it. That's all it is expecting it. See here, now it will go to the target system. It will display whatever is in the target temp folder, right? Simply displaying team. You saw the same output when I did it here also. You saw the same output almost. Whatever the output you see it here, you are seeing on your Ansible controller machine itself. You need not to log into target system again to validate something, create something, make some changes, validate something. Everything seated at one location. No matter what team, how many servers you will have on the target system, no matter what, how many servers you will have on the target system, it is simple that you implement a change, you validate a change, whatever you want to do it, you do it on the target system. Now these are simple, a single line task team, a single line of things basically. Likewise, if I want to get the disk usage, right, I can run a command called as df-h/. It will give me the disk utilization of my target system. See that it is 7.7 GB is a full system and I used only 1.5 GB. I have a 6.3 GB available. Disk usage, the hard disk usage we call it. Now similarly, if I want to validate something called as a RAM usage or RAM utilization, free-m command, I can log into the target system and run these things team, but sitting at one location, I'm able to get the information to my screen itself without any hassle, right? If I want to run this on 100 systems, I take at least login itself 100 minutes, right? And then you run the command and get the output into one place. That is going to be a huge task. But with Ansible, it is a simple task. Run a single command here. Ansible itself going to the target system, running the command, getting the output and displaying out on your screen. It is easy for us to implement the change team with Ansible tool. Very, very easy. And you can see that how easy it is. You must just aware of the modules. You must just use of aware of the modules accordingly. That's all you're gonna do it. Yes, we can do that, Patwa, so which is non-cloud with no external. Absolutely, you can do it, which is especially for your local environments only accordingly. Okay, right. So here it is. Now this is what you can use it completely. Completely, this tool can be used within your data centers, within wherever you want to do it, as long as you have a machine with you, a Linux system. You can simply do that. Doesn't matter whether it's within your data center, within your cloud, wherever it may be. Doesn't matter about it. It can be used anywhere according to your requirement. Right. So this is how we can implement ad hoc changes, right? These are called as ad hoc changes, I'm calling it. Try to understand. But this is not the realistic use case. Again, when we want to write a bigger automation, this is just a one-line task which you want to validate something or quickly implement something, that's okay. But when you want to write a real automation team, we must write a script, a bigger script where it will do multiple changes, a series of changes we call it. Now that is where team we go for the next level, where we write something called as a playbook. A playbook is nothing but a YAML file team. A playbook is nothing but a series of instruction that we use it. Now let me tell you how do I write it. Basically, I'll write simple one, but I'll explain how do I write it later. Let's say that with a playbook we are able to implement multiple changes or not. Let's say that I'm going to create a file here team, which is, let's say that you can give any name, but I'm just naming it as playbook for your understanding at the first. Playbook.yml I'm giving it. It is a YAML syntax in team. I'll also explain about how to write a YAML file. Let's say that within the YAML file, now I'll start with a hyphen basically. Why I use hyphen, what all things I need to use it, I'll tell you. There is a keyword called as host. I'll say that all, that is good. Now within this one team, now we're going to write something called as tasks. So task is the keyword. These are all the predefined keywords. Again, you must use it appropriately, right? Let's say that now within the tasks team, I want to write a set of tasks, right? Let's say that the first task, I will say that name. Let's say that task one, whatever it is, or you can give any name here, that's fine. Now let's say that here I want to copy a file. Let's say the copy is a module team. Likewise, I told you there are many predefined modules that you have it. You must know the modules to implement the changes. That's it. Now the copy is a module here team. Copy is that which is expecting a source and destination, which file to be copied where. Now within this one team, I will use something called as, let's say that the source file, let's say that temp hello.txt. This is the file I'm giving it. Now the destination is that your target system team, target system, which means that under the target system it what. Now this is always the control team. The source is always your always. So let's say that always on controller machine, right? Controller machine in the sense the file must exist on your controller machine. Now the destination is at your target machine, right? So on target machine, right, where you want to copy, right, where you want to copy the file account. This is the first task team that you want to do it. This is the first task that you do it. Now let's say that I want to write a second task here, right? Now let's say that hyphen here I'm doing it name. Let's say that my task two. Let's say that task two I'm doing it. Now within the task two team, I can use a different module to implement some other change. Basically, let's say that I'm creating something called as file, right? With a file module team, I'm trying to implement something called as your path. I'm using it where you want to copy or create a directory like that. Again, let's say that under the temp folder again, let's say that under the temp folder I'm using a DevOps directory this time, right? Or DevOps directory, or let's say that earlier we created a file, right, which is a directory basically. Let's say that I think Naresh was a directory that we created. That is what the directory we created. Now this time team I want to delete the directory. Now let's say that state absent, right? This is what I just want to give it. Whatever it may be here, just delete it. Absent in the sense team, earlier we created this directory using a directory file. Now the state absent I'm saying, which means that it is going to delete this directory, right? This is what I'm giving it. Now let's say that this is a keyword to delete directory, right? Delete directory. What are you saying? This is what it is. Now this is how team you can use the comments in the YAML file always like this. You can use the comments like I'm just making it here. Now likewise team, you can start writing n number of tasks, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, hundreds of tasks. You can write it whatever you want to write it, you write it accordingly here. But it is going to, these tasks will be implemented on all the tasks or all the host which is within your inventory file. That is what it is going to implement it. Now how do I write this structure team? The structure important, structure is very much important here. I'll talk about that structure again, but this is how you just simply do this once accordingly. Okay, this is what all you're gonna do it. Let's say that I'll discuss that. I'll discuss that what exactly it is. Now this is where I'm talking about it. Now whenever I write a playbook here, whenever I write a playbook, how do I implement or how do I execute this playbook, right? How do I execute this playbook? Let's say that team Ansible, so far in order to run an ad hoc command team, in order to write ad hoc command, right? Let's say that Ansible was the command used it, but if I want to use something called as playbook, right? If I want to run a playbook, then I use a command called as Ansible playbook. Then you must provide the inventory again, where exactly your inventory is available. Home Ansible hosts. Now, what are all the hosts you want to execute? That is within the Ansible playbook. So I'm skipping this all here. This is all you just need to add and provide your playbook name, which is nothing but your playbook one. Now this is how team you can simply run it. Let's say that I run this one right now. Now it is going to run my things accordingly. See that it is failing team for some reason. You know the reason here. It says that, as I said, like the file should be available on the controller machine team. This, which means that playbook.yml. As I said, like this file must be available on the controller machine. Do I have this file available here? Now that is the reason it is throwing an error there. It cannot stat or find this file. No such file or directory. You find the same error here also, right? Let's say that here, what is it? It says that the error was here. It is, you can see that, right? Module expect the file exist on the remote. See this one. right? This is what it says, that there is nothing file available here. That is what it is. Say that temp hello txt is not on the controller. That is what it is telling you. So this is why, team, you must create this file first of all here. Let's say that touch, the file must be available on the controller machine first of all to copy to the remote machines, the target machines. Now once I created that one, team, let's say that here I'm going to run the playbook again. This time it is going to be a successful, team. You can see that it says that something got changed, which means that the file got copied to the target system, team, successfully without any issues. And the second thing is that it also deleted my directory, right? Just to validate that one, let me log in here and show you the narrate directory, team. Earlier it was available here. Now if I say ls-l, because we asked to delete it, it deleted that one and it copied your ls hello.txt, right? This is how, team, you can write multiple instructions or multiple tasks within a single playbook, and it will start executing on the target machine, right? Now this is how, team, you can understand about Ansible, which will help you to understand or make the changes on the make any change on the target system. Now I know that you might have a confusion, how do I write my playbook or how do I understand about the YAML syntaxes, right? Let's say that here more playbook.com, where should I put hyphen here, where should I place some spaces here like this, why do I do the spaces, why did I put it in the structured format here, right? Why can't I write in a single line everything, why am I writing in a structured format, right? Now that is what is a YAML syntax, team. But when you're writing a YAML, basically you must know the basics of YAML. Let me explain the basics of YAML, team. You can understand that. Okay, so any YAML file, team, any YAML file, there are many YAML editors available. In order to understand the YAML structures, you can use a YAML editors basically. Now this Notepad++ is one of the YAML editor, you can use it. So within the language section of my Notepad++, I'll say that this is a YAML. This becomes a YAML file for me now, a YAML editor. Now YAML is called as your, team. Let me explain about the YAML. I know I wrote a YAML playbook. I executed it just to ensure that you know what the playbook is and how does the playbook runs. I showed that, but let me explain about the YAML a little bit so that you will understand where do I put hyphen, where do I give the spaces necessary accordingly. Let me take about 5 to 10 minutes here to explain about the YAML. Then we'll go and write another bigger playbook with which we will be able to understand how Ansible will help us automate our infrastructure task accordingly. Now YAML, team, basically it is called as a data serialization language. Try to understand. Data serialization language, we call it. In other words, we call it as data representation, right? Represent your data in a structured format. That is what representation, right? So this is what we do, team, always. This is what is called as about YAML. YAML is always about how do I represent my data that can be understood or that can be understandable for various technologies or various things which you're going to use it. Now, when you're writing the YAML books, team, or YAML files, basically, there is only one rule that follows, which is called as indentation, right? Basic rule of YAML. Only one rule, there is nothing yet. Basic rule of YAML is that it called as YAML or YML, team. Both are one and same. Some people use YAML, some people use YML. Both are one and same, so don't confuse with it. The basic rule of YAML, team, or YAML files, which is called as indentation, right? When I say indentation, team, it is all about spaces that you give it, because if I want to represent the data in a proper format, I must use the necessary spaces so that it will look for me in a structured format. Now that is what you saw it in my YAML file also, just now what we wrote it. So just to explain this one, team, again, what are the rules that is going to use it always. Now within the YAML file, team, there are three different type of data structures that we use it within simple one. Let's say that here, the first and foremost thing is called as strings, team, in a simple words. And the second thing is called as a dictionary or a map basically, or the third type of a data structure is called as your list or array, right? So what is this basically and how do you understand it, right? Now when I say string, team, it is a straightforward key value pair. Let's say that a key will be given to you, any key, that's it, and there is a value for it, which means that, team, a key always ends with a colon at the end, that is mandatory, and after the colon there must be a space, mandatory. Now as I told, again I'm telling you specifically, the YAML file is all about the spaces. You must use appropriate spaces wherever necessary. If one space here and there also, it will throw an error basically. You must be very careful when you write a YAML file. Okay, so for example, team, let's say that here I'll say that name Naresh, right? That is what or let's say that car BMW. Like this one team, these are the straightforward key value pairs that we use it to represent some data about something, about anything that you call about it. This is called as a straightforward key value pair. This can be known as a string values within the YAML file accordingly. Now the next type of next type of a data structure here is called as your dictionary or a map. Dictionary or a map here we call it. When I say map or a dictionary team, a single keyword, let's say that a single key, right? A car is an example I'm taking it here, but a car is a single key here, but it holds multiple properties to it. When I mean to say that, when I want to put a multiple properties to it, a key always ends with a colon again like this. Now when I want to represent a multiple properties to for this single keyword, I'll come below and I'll use two spaces here minimum. Minimum is two spaces that you can use it. Once you use this one, let's say that I'm going to put a name of the car. Let's say that this is BMW, right? Now let's say that the color of the car is, right, simple, that one, red. Now let's say that engine of the car is like this, a 3-liter engine I have it. Now this is all the property stream which are belong to the car keyword itself, right? This is how you are doing it. Now this structure is called as your dictionary. Okay, whenever I say car, car has a name, and then car has a color, car has an engine accordingly. Now again team, all the properties of the car should be on the same indentation or same space level here, which means that I cannot move the color behind this one. Means that this color is no more a property of a car. This becomes the property of my name, because right, child we call it. Say that these are all becomes on the same line here. This becomes the properties of car. If I move a little bit inside from the name column where it started, now this becomes the property of my name, not more any more property of my car. That's how team I'm telling that the spaces are very much mandatory here, right? Here again you can see that engine also, even if you give like this, it is no more a property of a car, it is independent keyword again, right? Now that is how it becomes. So you have to ensure that everything resides on the same indentation level or same space level when you're writing a dictionary. A single keyword has multiple properties to it. Now that is where you have something called as a dictionary or a map that we call it. Now the one last structure team which you have it within the YAML file is called as your list or array. Let's say that the example here again taking it as cars. Instead of a car, I'm saying it cars right now. When you say cars here team, you can understand that there will be a list of cars that will be there, right? A list of cars will you can do it. Now, whenever you start a list within the YAML file, we must start with a hyphen. Now, this is where you use a hyphen when you represent a list data, then we call that as a hyphen in front of that one. Let's say that here I see that a BMW is a car for me. Another car is something like Audi. Another car is something like Rolls-Royce, something. So here you have, right? This is list data or list of structure, we call it. Now, this is how you can understand there are three types of data structure that you would see it normally. Nothing else apart from that one within this one. Try to understand here. There is a list structure, or there is a dictionary structure, or there is a straightforward key value pair, right? This is what the YAML structure, or this is how I need to write my YAML file. And everywhere the spaces are very much important, and do not use a tab also use it for space, I believe. I understand that one, but never ever give a tab within the YAML file. A tab throws a straightforward error. You cannot use a tab for spacing within the YAML file. You must use individual spaces by using a space bar always. That is a strict rule which is followed within the YAML file again, right? So these are all the rules team for your YAML file. How do I write it? Now with this structure, let's try to look at our playbook one more time and try to understand the things accordingly, right? Now getting back to this one team, getting back to this one, let's say that vi playbook.yml. Now within this one, see that now we say that team, well, let's start with this. Basically why I started here hyphen is that my YAML playbook is consist of multiple plays. Now what is a play? Basically a play is a set of instruction that runs on a set of host, right? That is what it is. Let's say this is my, instead of all team, I can give a something called as a production host or something. I can divide my host basically on based on my production host accordingly. Let's say that this is my prod host, something like that. Now likewise team, I can write multiple plays within this one, a list of plays within a single playbook. That is the reason we put it as a hyphen at the front of my this one, right? Now when I write here like this, I can write another play which is consisting of various tasks for me that would run on against a different set of servers, right? Let's say that here I can use something called as a QA servers. So here it is. So here it is, the QA, right? Now this is how team, this is the list one. Within this one, a playbook is a list of plays team, that's what we call it. That is the reason we have hyphen at the first basically. So I can write as many list of plays I wanted to execute against the same different servers accordingly. This is what it is, a list of plays. That is the reason a playbook is a list of plays. That is the reason we started with hyphen, because it starts a list. A list is always starts with a hyphen there. That is the first rule. And when you start a list here, the host is a keyword. It is a straightforward key value pair for me. Try to understand. So straightforward key value pair for me. The host exists of what type of host you want to execute against, right? So here it is, and the task keyword is something you can understand. When I'm defining a task keyword, I want to execute multiple tasks or a list of tasks basically. That is the reason again, a task keyword comes below and then starts with a hyphen again. This is the list one or the first index or something, what you call it, the task one and task two. That is what you see it. That is the reason this is a list value, the first item in the list, second item in the list, right? Now this one team, whenever I say copy here, a copy has a set of properties to it, right? Let's say that I want to copy from file source to the destination. That copy has a set of properties to it. Now that properties is nothing but a dictionary again, which means that in the task is a list. A list has a dictionary within it. That is how to you write a complex YAML structures. There is a nested structure that goes in accordingly. A list may consist of inside dictionary, or dictionary may consist of list inside. So list in list or list in dictionary or dictionary in list, that is how you write your complex structures of your YAML file accordingly. But this is a very, very simple playbook that I'm using it here to make you understand about how do we do it, right? So this is what it is team. All the structure, whatever the task here, they will all execute it in a series of executions. It is not a parallel tasking. It is like a serial execution, one task after the other. If you want to make them parallel also, we can make them parallel, but the default behavior is that it is a serial execution, one task after the other task. That is the default behavior. But if you want to make them to run in parallel, we can also make them to run in parallel accordingly. That can be taken care accordingly, right? So that is what it is team. That's what I'm saying. Whatever the task that you want to do it, that is the default behavior is that a sequential order. But if you want to make it in a parallel order, that is also achievable. But the default behavior is always the sequential order that you can do it according. Right now it is only the sequential order that is going it according to your requirement. Now this is the reason team, I may write it, I may not write the second play here. That is up to you. That is what I'm removing it here. Now this is how team you can understand about it, right? There are various tasks that can be achieved within the same playbook. Like this is a very basic example team I'm showing you, but let me show you a realistic playbook. With that, we will try to understand more things accordingly, right? So this one we already run team. This I'm removing it accordingly. So there are many examples we have given to you within the repository that we shared here. You can go to this document here. Within that, there are ad hoc commands. You can run the ad hoc commands accordingly, right? You can go to the playbooks here. The playbooks are there, multiple examples of playbooks. You can try to understand them, but I'll try to show you one example here, which is the Tomcat example again. Now let me show you this one team. This is a list of tasks. There are many tasks available. Let's copy this one, right? I'm just taking this example team. We'll try to run this bigger playbook and you would understand various modules, various instructions that you give it to install something on the target systems. Let me take this example here. I'll write it. Let's say that tomcat.y. We can name anything team. The playbook name can be anything. It need not to be a playbook always. Playbook name can be anything, whatever you want to give it, within which you just have to write the things according, right? Now these are the various tasks team that we are doing it. Let's say that now this is what it is. Now you see this time basically the host keyword I'm using it. Now let's say that I want to install against all the servers. Now I'll use something called as all. Now there is one more thing team which we haven't discussed so far. Now whenever you implementing some change on the target system, right, the Ansible logging in as a user called as Ansible user, that's where team, whenever you see something is getting created here, you see the permissions as Ansible, right? Which means that all the instructions are running as Ansible only. But some reasons team, for something if you want to install it, you must need a root privileges, right? Let's say that Ansible logged in. Now if I run to something called as apt get update, this might fail, right? It says that there is something called as a package or permission issues will be there for you, a permission denied, which means that team, if I want to run an apt get command or something, I need a sudo privileges, which means that I should be able to switch to a root user, right? If I say sudo su hyphen, now I'll be a root user, right? Then I can run my apt get update. Now, how do you instruct your Ansible to run or switch to a root user is that we use a simple keyword called as become yes, which means that first of all, Ansible logs in as Ansible user. After it logs in, it says that become yes, which means that we want to become a super user like a root user. Then it will convert into a root user. Then it will start executing these tasks accordingly. This is what all you're going to do it. Now the first task here, team, look at that there are many tasks here. I'll try to explain all these tasks for you guys. Let's look at the one by one here. Then after that I will explain that whatever you needed. Okay, here it is, team. The first thing is called as your one not I'm trying to install Java, like we took an example of our example today in the morning, today the when in the evening what we started the session. This is the example I'm taking. I want to install Java, I want to install Tomcat, and I want to deploy war file also. So here it is. We can do that also. We can do that if you want to switch to any other user also, that is also possible, like not only the root user. By default it becomes the root user, but if you want to switch to any other user, if you want to run it as a different user, all those things are possible also. Whatever the switch you want to do it from Ansible user to another user like Tomcat user and start something as a Tomcat user, yes, all those things are possible for us. Whatever the way we want to do it, you do it. You just have to explore the things what you need it accordingly. But let's look into this playbook accordingly first of all, right? Click at this one. Right now, team, I'm trying to run all these instructions as my root user because I'm using a super user here called as apt module. Like the apt get update, the same command that you used it, I'm using a module of my Ansible called as apt, right? The first task is them. I'm trying to install the Java 1.8. apt module is something I'm doing it. The name of the package that you're installing, which is OpenJDK 8, and the state present, which means that, team, if the Java is not there, we are asking to install it. Ensure that the Java is present on my system. That is what the instruction given to the Ansible here. So Ansible try to install it if it is not present. If it is already present, it is not going to do anything accordingly. Now that is the first task which are giving it. And the second task is that I'm adding a group, like we created an Ansible user before we starting, Ansible working here. We created a user and we do something like that. We can add the users and groups also using Ansible itself. There is a group module which is available, which lets me create a group of Tomcat, right? I'm also creating a user called as a Tomcat user. The name is Tomcat user. I'm creating it like user add that you did for Ansible. Now I'm adding this Tomcat user to the Tomcat group. That is what all I'm doing it. Likewise, team, I'm setting up my own instruction for setting up my own software accordingly. Now, after that, I'm also using something called as download Tomcat, or we are trying to download the Tomcat from the official Tomcat website, apache.org, from where we are trying to download the software using a get URL module. Get URL is a special module, team, using which we can download some software using the URL given to you. Just say that duplicate command like that. It can download the software from this particular URL which is given here. It will download that onto your system first of all, right? And after we download it, since it is a zip file, basically we need to extract the archive files using a command module. There are various module I'm introducing here. You have apt module, group module, user module, and a get URL module, and there is a command module to run a general commands like that. So I'm running a general Linux command using a command module straight away and extracting this into the opt folder and creating a Tomcat home here. Let's say that I'm moving this one, a complete folder, into OPT Tomcat straight away. Now, once that is done, I'm changing the ownership of my Tomcat installation because we created a user called as Tomcat and everything. We want to run the Tomcat process as a Tomcat user, but not as a root user, not as an Ansible user. Also, we're owning that Tomcat process with the Tomcat user itself. Here it is. Now you can see that OPT Tomcat is a folder, owner changing it to the Tomcat, and a group. This is the file module, team. A file module will help you to update the permissions also accordingly. So whatever the way you want to do it, recursively change it. If it has some inbuilt, the recursive directory structure, change the entire directory permissions recursively for the subdirectories and subdirectories accordingly. complete folder structure need to owned by the Tomcat user itself. That is what all we are trying to use it, right? So this is what all we are trying to use it. So this is always on the serial instruction only, that's on the do it one task after other, which is a serial instruction on the target host always. It is not multiple systems. I'm saying that multiple systems will be running in parallel, but on every host, the task will be serial instruction. Okay. Multi-parallel hosting, parallelly executing on all the hosts, but instruction will be running one after the other on every host accordingly, right? So task will be executed in a serial fashion, but all the hosts will be executed parallel accordingly. That is what it is. Parallel on both hosts. Instruction inside a single server will be on a serial fashion that will be there. Okay, parallelly on both the servers, which will execute it accordingly. Okay, so this is how we can understand about it, the changing the permissions. And finally, we are also trying to start up the Tomcat, become user here. User team says that I'm running this instruction, this particular user, this particular instruction I'm using as a Tomcat user, right? Rest everything is running as a root user completely. But with this particular command, because I want to start my Tomcat as a Tomcat user itself, Tomcat process, Tomcat user, this particular instruction I'm running as a Tomcat user. That's it. So it is going to start my Tomcat process using this command accordingly. Now this is the instruction team that we are giving to the Ansible directly. It is going to download Java, install Java. It is going to set up a Tomcat user, set up a Tomcat group, downloads the Tomcat bundle, and it also sets up the user, changes the permission to this one, and it will start the Tomcat process as a Tomcat user itself using the specific instruction again here, right? This is how we can understand about writing a bigger playbooks, bigger and bigger playbooks as you go on. If you start learning Ansible, you will enjoy writing YAML files definitely. So start learning it more. This is where team, I'm just going to show you this example now. How do I execute it? Ansible playbook, the same way we are doing it, -I, home Ansible host file, which is where I have inventory. Now you give the playbook name, like it's called as tomcat.yml, right? Let's execute this one. We'll see that if it is going to do it or not. See team, it is trying to install the Java right now. Just to show you quickly on my target system, Java-version, which is not available yet, but after the instruction is complete, the Java must be available here. That is what you can think about it. Okay, let's see that team. It is trying to install the Java on the target system right now. It is taking some time because Java is a huge component team. Should be download at least 200 MB, or it has to download the thing and it has to install it. It is running parallelly on both the servers. You can see that both the servers are being executed the first task. Similarly, the same task will be executing on the parallelly on both the servers. Like the third task parallelly on both servers, fourth task parallel. So the tasks are executed in serial fashion, but parallelly on both the servers at the same time. It is going to run it. Okay, so it is give you some error team here. Let's look at it. What is the error it is throwing out here? Let's say that here team, it is giving something called as a download Tomcat error, missing a required argument destination, right? Let's say this one, what exactly we are doing it. We are at tomcat.yml. It says that a missing argument, a destination basically. Let's say that here it is. I think this is what all we need to give it here. And this expecting that output, of course you're downloading the URL, but where exactly downloaded, we need to give that parameter here. I think we are missing that parameter. So -o I'll give it, which is going to be your, let's say that /opt. This is what all I'm giving it. Let's see that if it is going to do it or not, or let's say that on the target system, this is what I'm going to give it. Okay, the same thing, we'll try to instruct it -o output. Now let me rerun this one team again, the same playbook. It says that missing argument. Okay, there is some syntaxing issue team again, you can see that. Let's say that here we want to use this within a single line team. It's this spacing may matter here sometimes. Let's say that. Okay, so it is missing something here. Let me check this one team. Just give me a second team. I'll give you a proper thing here. Just give me a second. It is expecting a destination keyword, basically. That's all it is expecting it. So let's look into that. Okay, there is some syntax we missed, team, here. That's all about it. So here it is. I think within our playbook it's missing it. So let's see. I will modify this here. So here it is. The URL is expecting a destination keyword. Let me go to the end here. Wait a second. The cursor here. Here it is, team. We are expecting a destination keyword. That's what it says to you. So let's say that destination is equals to this one. This is all you need to give a team. URL is equals to something and destination is equals to something. That's all I'm giving it. Let's say that here, this is what we're going to download it right now. It should work, team, right now. Let's go ahead and then do it. Now let's do this one, if it is going to do it or not. Great, it is downloading, team, right now. See that there is no issue right now. I think we are done. Great, so you can see that, team, it is able to download it and it is able to unarchive it, right? And then create the Tomcat home, whatever it is, and then changing the ownership and finally started the Tomcat accordingly, right? Now this is how, team, you can think about it. We implemented something. Now let's go to the target system, right? Let's say that Java hyphen version, we see the Java is available. Let's say that ps hyphen ef grep Tomcat server. See that the Tomcat process is successfully started with a Tomcat user here. Means that, team, you will be able to access your Tomcat from the browser straight away right now. Let me show you how do I access my Tomcat. Go to the EC2 here, take the IP address of your instance, and let's say that Tomcat by default runs on 8080 port number, team, just like your Jenkins. If you hit it, now you should see your Tomcat is successfully launched, right? So this is how, team, we can simply install everything, right? This is how you can do it. So this is how you can simply, install anything on the target system. Just now we installed only on the 2 systems, team. It took around 2 minutes for this one. Now if you go to install the same thing on 100 systems also, team, it may take up to maximum 5 minutes. You will be able to finish all the tasks for you, right? Now this is how, team, a configuration management tool, you can sit at one location and then start implementing the changes on the target system. Whatever may be the change, that you can simply install it or deploy it. Whatever you may think about it, you can simply do it on the target system easily using a playbook or using an ad hoc instruction. Whatever you want to do it, you do it according to your requirement. Now this is the concept of your configuration management, team, to be things one. I hope you're all understood about right now how do I do these things, right? I will correct the instruction here, we will do it later. Now this is how, team, you can understand about how do I write a playbook, right, within the playbook, or how do I execute the playbook, how do I make use of my own custom inventory, right? All these things, team, you can understand it, but you must start practicing the things more and more here to understand more about the configuration management tools. You must have a basic Linux knowledge because we are implementing the changes on a Linux server here. Similarly, you can install changes on the Windows servers also, and Ansible controller can make some changes on the Windows servers also. That is also possible. That is a protocol will be a little bit different. That is another different setup you need to do it. But this is the basic understanding that you need to have it. This is the basic understanding that you need to have it accordingly, right? So this is where you can understand the things. How do you implement the changes accordingly? So Jenkins Tomcat runs on same port. If you want to instruct that, do we need to mention in YAML file? Yes, we can change the configurations accordingly. Tomcat can run on a different port number also. You must update the configuration files of the Tomcat to run it on a different port number, right? But two systems, two port numbers cannot be allocated here on a single system. If you try to run the same port number again, it is going to give some issue. Now that is what is not the concept again here. So here, try to understand it. We cannot use two processes, cannot use the same port number on a single system. That is the reason I have a different system here again. So if I try to install same thing, a Tomcat here directly, because Jenkins already runs on 8080, I cannot start my Tomcat because two processes cannot use the same port number. If you want to customize the Tomcat to run on a different port number, yes, you can use that according to your requirement. Okay. So, but this is the concept, team. This is the simple concept that I'm telling you. This is how you can implement any configuration changes on any number of systems using Ansible as a configuration management tool, right? So in real time, we normally make use of these things accordingly to ensure that we always do the things accordingly. Now, this is the concept of configuration management, team, but I would stop here with the configuration management tool. I hope you have enough knowledge here right now, right? So with this understanding, team, we will try to jump on to our next topic, which is also mandatory topic here, which needs to be understanding, and that is how we want to move forward. So we'll make use of Ansible like this to implement our complete CI/CD pipeline. Also within a CI/CD pipeline, we can integrate Ansible for connecting to a remote machines and start deploying my application. Also means I can simply write a playbook where I can deploy my war file into all the target systems. That is also configurable accordingly, right? So we will do that. Consider that you just install Tomcat. This is how you could prepare your infrastructure, right? This is how we normally prepare our infrastructure that is ready to deploy my application. Correct. Great. Now I'm stopping with Ansible team. That's all about the Ansible. So how do I set up Ansible? How do I write ad hoc instruction? How do I write a playbook? A YAML syntaxing that you understood very clearly. And we try to execute a playbook which shows the realistic example, like how do I set up my installations? How do I set up my configuration of Tomcat, everything. With this understanding team, I'm stopping with the Ansible as a configuration management tool. So with keeping in the time, like we have to cover many other tools within the next 3 days. So I'll try to jump on to the next tool, which is going to be called as Docker. Why do we need Docker? What is the purpose of Docker? Everything we're going to understand it right now, but I would like to start with a topic called as Docker as a containerization tool. So how are we going to deploy our application? I know that with Ansible now you understand that we can set up our infrastructure ready for deploying applications, deploying a war file or whatever it may be. But we understood now team, we can deploy this one, that's okay. We can directly deploy a war file onto a VM where the Tomcat is installed directly. But this way of installations, this way of things team, we are not following nowadays with the containers in the picture team. With containers in the picture, basically we are not actually deploying our war file directly, but instead we containerize our application and we're deploying the container environment accordingly, right? Now with this thing, let's try to understand what is Docker or why do we need Docker here. What are the advantages that you get with the Docker, correct? Now you know that team, the common problem that we discussed basically with this way of setup. Let's say that you set up the Tomcat now across all the hundreds of servers. Let's say that you set up something in QA environment. QA environment had 10 servers. At same Tomcat configuration file used it. That's good. Now let's say that I have production environment also where I have 100 servers. With the same automation, I set up my Tomcat on 100 servers separately, right? Java installed separately, Tomcat installed separately. Tomcat configurations are independent on every server separately, that we have done it like this. Now we're trying to deploy our application into the system. Now you understood a problem earlier also, that right? So where my application, right? How do we instruct that? Is it same via YAML file, or we can yes some details on same? See guys, I'll answer your question at the end maybe, right? But we need to cover something. So I understand that you need it. So the same YAML file can be deployed. You need to write some other instruction, take a war file and deploy into the target system. Yes, we still use the same structure again, same thing. The instruction will be a little bit different for deploying. Try to understand, right? I can deploy the same thing again. Like you deployed a Tomcat server, now I can write another playbook where it will take a war file and start copying into the target system and deploy it on the target system accordingly. That is what all it is going to do it. So I think I answered the questions on the chat window also here. As I said, like it is going to be parallelly on both the host. That is what I'm telling you, parallelly on both the hosts. That's what I told you clearly, right? That is what I'm telling it. So the instructions will be running on all the hosts parallelly. When you run a playbook against n number of servers, all the n number of hosts will run the same instructions parallelly. Okay, that's what I told it. So you must understand that one. That is what it is. Okay, now this is how team you can understand about it. Ansible again. I'm stopping here with the Ansible. So let's move on to the Docker. Now why Docker is required? What is the Docker? How does a container help you to deploy your application within different environments, that we can discuss. Okay, now here team, so here as I said, now you install a Tomcat in dev environment separately. The same playbook used it. Install Tomcat separately, install Tomcat Java separately, So each and every individual machine team, we setting up a Tomcat separately, and we're missing or we're maintaining the configurations independently on every server, right? Of course, using an automation to deploy everything that will make sure that it is consistent across the environments for sure. The installation process will be consistent across all the environments. Let's say that for some reason, when you deployed an application that was working in the development environment or a QA environment, but when you deployed the same application or a war file on the production environment, it is not working. Why it is not working is the question, right? Why it is not working is the question, right? So if you try to understand team, the various reasons basically here, this is that when in my development environment team, let's say that the developer has configured some application dependencies where he has to write something. So along with the war file, because whenever we deploy here, we understood that we're going to deploy only war file. But what about the dependencies like application property files, not only the Tomcat configurations team, right? Let's say that in my development environment, operating system was upgraded to the latest one, a latest patch level, which is missing in the production. So there's an OS patching missing in the production, which would cause my application instability. Or let's say that in my development environment or QA environment, being a playground there completely. So developers are upgraded some configurations at the developer system level, but that system configuration has not carried forward to the production environment. So production will fail it for sure. There are multiple reasons. There are multiple reasons because you are setting up the configuration separately, each and every layer. OS is different because my application uses some kind of OS libraries also. Now, similarly, the Java itself is different on every machine. Maybe let's say that's some Java library available on my development machine, where developer has copied the latest Java library on my this one. He used the Java library to build the application. He built the application. He ran the application. It was working fine. But when he is delivering the application, he forgot to mention this dependency of the Java library, which need to be copied over to the production also. That was missing there. So this was the problem team. This is the problem basically. That is a regular problem that you see it whenever you want to, whenever you're delivering your only application code. That is what is causing some issues while it is working in the development and QA environment, but it does not works in the production environment, right? So this is the use case team. That is what you can think about it right now. So how do I ensure that I will deliver my application plus all of its dependencies to the delivery environment accordingly? Now that is where team we discuss about a configuration or a package basically, which will help me to deliver the application into all the target systems accordingly. Consider this one team. Let's say that instead of delivering only war file right now, let's say that this is the war file I'm talking about it. Now you understood that we pre-set up all these configurations and I deliver this one in war file like this into every environment. This is what you use it. But instead of delivering only war file team, how about delivering the entire structure, right? Whatever it is required here. Let's say that I'll prepare a package. I'll prepare a package here. So the package going to consist of my application, right? Let's say that this is a war file. I'll copy it. Now, along with that, I'll have Tomcat inside it. Now, along with that, I'll have Java inside. There is something called as OS library, which is required by your application. Now, all these things will be available within the package itself for me to try to understand. This is what I'm trying to use it. All of the things which are required to run my application. Think that team, whatever the dependencies, the Java dependencies also, you can see that there's some dependencies we call it. Whatever may be the dependencies to run my war file, I will have to package them together into a single bundle, right? Single bundle and deliver your entire thing into the different environments rather than hosting this separately on every environment, right? Let's say that here, instead of delivering this, now instead of delivering only the war file team, now I want to deliver this whole package here, right? This is what I want to deploy it here. So if this working fine here, I can deliver it here also. Now, if this is working here also, then I can move it to the pre-production. Now you do not set up the Java Tomcat separately on every environment team with containers in the picture. Now we containerize everything into a single bundle and we will deliver this one into all the environments, right? So this is how team, this is how we talk about containerization, which will resolve and which will easy for me to deliver across environment. Now this is the main concept behind the containerization team, which will also provide a lot of dynamic features like dynamic resource utilization. We get it. and they are easily scalable, we call it. Means the containers are lightweight. The container package that we are preparing will become a lightweight thing accordingly, very much lightweight. So it will easy for me to deploy it across different environments, right? And along with that team, the boot up time for your application container also will be a very minimal. So it comes up very quickly. That's what we call it. Now this is the concept team here, but here, right team. Now the question is that how do I build this package, right? Question is that how to build this package, right? And how do I run it? How to run this package, right? Now that is where team, that is where we need these questions need to be answered. These questions need to be answered. The answer is Docker, right? Now Docker is a containerization tool team. Docker is called as a containerization tool basically. So Docker is known as your containerization tool, which will help me to build this package and which will help me to run this package across various environments. Now what exactly we try to do this team here, instead of installing Tomcat, Java, everything separately, what I'll do is that I will take out all these things on my all environments. I won't deploy this separately anymore because that will carry out along with my package itself. Right now all these modules will be carried out, whatever the dependencies to run my application will be carried out with my container itself. Now within this one team, I'll have a plain machine, and as I said, like if I want to run this package, I need to have a software here. That software is nothing but your Docker. So on all my environments team, I have a machine where I install the Docker. That's it. So maybe you may use now to Ansible to deploy the Docker or install the Docker across all the instruments environments. That is how you can use the Ansible again. Of course we set up something different there, but this is how the containerization came into the picture. This is how the architecture is being changed here a little bit for containers. Right now we do not deploy Java separately on Tomcat separately on every individual virtual machines. Now that is not there anymore. We just have entire infrastructure. Let's say that if I have 1,000 servers in my production, all my 1,000 servers will run only the Docker software, nothing else apart from that. So we minimize the maintenance part here. Instead of maintaining different softwares separately on individual machines, we are putting into a package. A package can be managed easily, and we deliver that package into the various environments. So this is where team, we deploy the Docker across all the servers. Now the Docker will help me build this package also, along with that run this package also across all the environments. That is what we call it. Now this is how I can run my package here. Our Docker will help me run this package entire stack. This is going to use it like this, and here also will run it, here also will run it, here also will run it. So entire stack will be deployed as a single package here that will help your application run constantly or consistently across various environments without missing any dependencies to it. If my application works in development environment, that must work in the production environment also without any question with this kind of a deployment. Now this is how we are trying to deploy it, our applications, right? This is how we are trying to deploy our applications across various environments within our organizations with a containerization accordingly, right? So this is what all a team. So how do I prepare this package, or what is this package called as something? Now you understood that Docker is a tool here. Docker is a tool or containerization tool here, which will help me prepare this container, right? Technically team, technically this package is called as your Docker image, right? Whatever the package that you are preparing it, now that package is called as your Docker image basically. Now what is container then? What is container basically? We just run this container team or run this image basically. Try to understand. You get the same content again. There is no difference in it, right? You will get exactly the same thing. But what exactly is the difference here? If you try to understand, you say that run a Docker image. Now that becomes a Docker container, right? We call it as Docker container. This is what I call it. This is what I call it. Now what exactly is the difference between a Docker image and a Docker container team? As you see the same content in both the ways, right? As you see the same content in both the ways here, right? So here team, try to understand that image is nothing but a static form, whereas the Docker container is a runtime instance of an image, I call it. In a simple words team, try to understand in a simple words. If I say it, let's say that there is a car that you have it, you parked a car in your shed. Now what is the state of the car in a parked car, right? It is nothing but engine is stopped, it is not moving anywhere. That's how it is, right? It is just occupying some space, not utilizing any resources to run the engine accordingly. The engine is in off state, which is of no use there, right? Means that is some purpose is there, but you cannot use the car. But if you want to utilize the car features now, you will have to get onto the road, you start the engine, you gear up the car, and you move it. Now, if you see that team on the road, the engine is in started state, which is serving the purpose of a car. The difference, if you try to understand the parked car and a running car, the exact difference you can correlate here. Like a Docker image is like your parked car. It has everything which can run it. It has everything within it, which can be utilized accordingly to run it. Now, the container is nothing but a running car here, where it will be started serving your application, which means that within the image, basically the Tomcat is available, my application is available, Java is available, whatever is there, everything is available, but they are not in a running state, right? Means that until unless you do not run it, it does not consume any resource, so you cannot access your application, right? Until unless you do not boot up your laptop team, you cannot utilize anything on that machine. Similar to that one, until unless I cannot run it as a container, I cannot start it, I cannot use the application within the package which I created. That is the difference, team, that you need to understand between a Docker image and a Docker container. Docker image is simple package which has everything in it, doing nothing. A Docker container is where you start your Tomcat process and you start your application, or you load the application in the Tomcat, that you could send a request into the container, and that container will be accessible for you accordingly. Now, this is the concept, team. That is what is called as Docker, basically Docker containerization. So we'll try to understand now, how do I containerize my application? Means whatever the Docker var file we created, we must containerize our application. Then instead of delivering only the var file, we're going to deliver our containerized application into the various environments accordingly. Now that is the understanding, team, that you need to have it. That is the understanding that you need to have it here. So this is where we can think about it. How do I build this package? How do I deploy the Docker right now? How do I set up a machine with a Docker? Now, once the Docker is available, how do I use the Docker to run a container if I have an image? Let's say that you have an image, you do not know how to prepare images yet. You do not know how to run the containers from the image. So we're going to understand one step at a time, team. First, we'll deploy the Docker, or we'll install a Docker on a machine. Once we install the Docker on a machine, we will try to get some images somewhere, and then we'll try to run the containers. And then once we understand how do I run the containers, then I'll show you how do you prepare your own Docker images accordingly. Now this is the flow, team. This one we'll be going through again. Maybe tomorrow and today and tomorrow also we're going to discuss about Docker. I'm not going to finish it in 1 hour, so don't worry. So we'll just understand the basics today, and then we'll try to discuss more on the Docker and containers tomorrow. How do I run the containers across different environments in a clustered environment? All those things we're going to understand it accordingly. Okay. You will understand it tomorrow mostly, Gaurav, I believe. You'll understand it mostly tomorrow, Gautam. Right? So this is where we can understand about it. Right? Today we'll try to understand what exactly is Docker image, or how do I install the Docker right now on a machine, and how do I get my images, and how do I run a container from my image, or how do I access an application running within a container accordingly. We have to understand it accordingly, right? So here it is. So let's do this one, team. I hope you're all clear. This is the way, team. Docker also comes up with a slogan called as, it says that build, ship, and run, right? This is the slogan of your Docker, basically. That's comes it. It says that you build your application package completely, which has application plus all of its dependencies, and you can ship anywhere. Means you can build an image and you can ship anywhere to the cloud environment or any multi-cloud, wherever you want to run it. It doesn't matter about it. It can run anywhere. No dependency matters underlying host there. Everything is within the container itself. You can simply run wherever you want it. Build anywhere, ship anywhere, run anywhere. That is what Docker tells you. That is how the flexibility comes out for your Docker. That is what the Docker containerization brings into the picture for you. That is what is going to do it. Okay. Now this is the different system that you can understand about it. Right now, think that now how do I get this Docker done? For which team? For which I think we can take any of these machines again. Let's say that I'm going to take my controller machine itself here. So let me switch to the root user team. We are not going to use any more Ansible, so I'll go back to your this one. See that I'll log out. So I'll be back here. Now let's see this team. This is a plain machine again. We have nothing here as of now. Consider that you just have installed Ansible. We're not going to use Ansible anymore. Now I can install the Docker on this machine. I will show you how do I install the Docker. Once I install the Docker runs as a service, so we can start the Docker, whatever it may be. Once the Docker is available, now we'll try to understand how do I run the containers from an image given, or we'll try to build our own images accordingly. Whatever we're going to do it, we will do it accordingly. Okay. So here it is, team. Let's go ahead and try to install Docker right now. Let's say that docker-v to check a Docker command if it is working or not. See that it says that command Docker not found, but can be installed, means that we have to install the Docker here. Don't follow this default instruction, so I'll go you all the instruction for you guys. So one machine, team, I'm not required multiple machines as of now, so I'm going to take it on one machine itself. Let's say that here, go to the this one again here, go to this one, go to a Docker folder, this one, team, go to the Docker folder here. Within the Docker folder, you have all the instruction required for you. Okay, so go to the install folder. So here it is, you have install docker manual.txt file. You can go for this one. There are a series of instruction which I'm given here to install your Docker. So please follow this instruction to install the things accordingly, right? Let's say that I'm using it here. Now this is what I'm going to run it on my machine right now, right? I'm running this one, team. Okay, great. It is trying to remove if there is an existing Docker, team, because Docker is an open source product. Docker has an enterprise edition also, team. Docker is by default an open source basically. So the open source, because it is coming out with the default operating system nowadays. That is why I'm trying to remove if there is anything exist first of all. Now after you understood this one, let's say that we're going to install our Docker and its prerequisites, whatever is necessary manually, and you can automate the same stuff, team, with Ansible also right now. Instead of installing a Docker manual steps, you can write a playbook for your for Docker installation. I can ask my Ansible to install the Docker exact across all my infrastructure. That is also can be done accordingly, right? That is the purpose of your Ansible basically. For infrastructure configuration management, we use the Ansible. For containerization things, we're going to use the Docker accordingly. Okay. So we're trying to download the Docker from official Docker page. There are, as I said, like, team, Docker has two versions, which is a enterprise edition as well as the open source edition. Now the open source edition is called as Docker CE, which is nothing but Docker community edition, we call it. That is what we're going to use it also from official website itself. We're going to download the Docker software and we'll try to install the things accordingly. Okay. So here it is, and then update once and we can install the necessary things for your Docker on one machine. So one last step, team, here to install the Docker, which is Docker CE, we call it. Docker CE stands for Docker Community Edition, which is an open source product. Okay. The latest Docker version is R20. It is called as 19.03.12. That is the latest Docker version we have it. That is what all we're going to do it. Now, once you install the Docker, team, once you install the Docker on your system, right, we're going to understand about it again. So here it is. Let's say that, team, a Docker runs as a service. First of all, you can see that Docker-v basically. Look at that. A Docker is installed right now, and you see the Docker version is responding for us. Now, once you have the Docker installed, team, let's say that Docker runs as a service, just like your Jenkins. You can check the Jenkins or service process here. Service Docker status, right? You can see that the Docker is started and it is active and running right now. The Docker process is running on my system. Docker process must be running on your system, team, to run any containers or to run something here. Ensure that your Docker process is always running. Now, similarly, team, we need to know where exactly it installs the default installation location again, which will be under the var lib Docker, just like you had var lib Jenkins yesterday. You can see that var lib Docker is the default location where your Docker resides in, and all the components related to Docker will be resides within this particular folder itself. In case of troubleshooting, we can look for this particular folder where I can find some information about my Docker stuff accordingly. Now this is how, team, you can simply understand about it. Let's say that we installed the Docker right now. We install the Docker right now. My Docker service is running. But the question is that how do I run an image, or how do I create my image? How do I run a container? First of all, team, we'll try to understand about how do I run the containers. But in order to run the containers, team, I need an image first of all. I need an image first of all. So from where do I get these images? Are there any publicly available images available for me? Are there any public Docker images available? Can I use those images freely? Yes, the answer is yes, team. There are many public Docker images available for us. Let's say that here, go to your let's say that hub.docker.com is a place basically you find it. There is a Docker hub team, we call it, just like your GitHub is a place for your source code, the public place, and then there is something called as a Docker hub here. The Docker hub is a public place where you can find many Docker images readily available. So we can simply download those Docker images and start running them as containers, right? That is what we're going to do it anyway here. So let's look at it. This is a place, team. I can find out any Docker image of your choice. Let's say that I can find a Docker image called as Tomcat, right? This is the simplest example which we built right now. There is a Tomcat image available for me. Now, similarly, if I want to go ahead and then find out a web server called as Apache, I can find Apache web server, which is HTTPD web server. I have it. Let's say that I want to build, or I want to find out another thing called as Nginx is another web server. I have that one also available. Now let's say that I'm trying to find out some databases, maybe like Mongo is a database or something, whatever it may be. Let's say that Mongo database. Like there are many Docker images, team. For every technology that you have it in the market right now, every technology there will be an appropriate Docker image will be available for you. Let's say that if I try to find something called as Python Docker images, yes, it is available. If you see that there is something called as Node.js, right? Node.js will also be available for you, right? Let's say that the Node.js something, whatever it is, team, there are many Docker images available on the Docker Hub, readily available. Now, when I say these are the images, team, these are the Docker images. As I said, like a Docker image consists of everything, whatever is necessary to run it. For example, again, I'm taking a Tomcat, which means that if I want to run a Tomcat, what are all the dependencies needed? All those things will be available within that image. Considering this one, team, considering this one that I wrote it here, if I want to run my Tomcat, I need a Java, I need OS basically. So everything will be within that container itself. Everything will be within that container itself. So for example, here right now, if I am trying to run or download this Tomcat image, right? I'm saying that this is a Tomcat image which I'm trying to download, which means that within this Tomcat image, I have Tomcat already installed. I have Java already installed, and it also has something called as OS library, which is required to run your Tomcat software. Now, this is the content of your Tomcat image, team. If I download it, this is what I'm going to get it. Okay. So let's look into it. How do I get these things accordingly, right? How do I get something from my Docker Hub into my Docker server, right? That is what we're going to do it. So here it is, team. There is a software here. There is a command here. We call it simple command. Let's say that Docker pull, and you need to give your image name. Like whatever you see it on the Docker Hub right now, you just need to give this Tomcat image name, and it is going to pull that or download that onto your system accordingly. This is what all about it, team. This is what all about it. So how do I pull a Docker image of my own choice, right? Now this is a simple one, team. Or let's say that there are many accounts, or just like you created a GitHub account, you could also create a Docker Hub account. Basically, you could also create a Docker Hub account. Now let's say that, team, I also have my own account here, which is called as Learn DevOps. Now you can log into your account, right? You can log into your account here. This account, you see it here. This is my account, which is called as Learn DevOps. If you log into your account, team, you could build your own Docker images, and you could push your own Docker images or save your Docker images within the Docker Hub. Again, because it's a public hub itself, I can also upload my own Docker images here. Now I build a default Docker Tomcat image, or let's say that I want to pull my own Docker images like sample app or sample Java app, whatever you see it, team. This is the application I want to download it and do it according. So how do I download this many images which are available here? Let's say that here sample app I'm gonna here. Now, if you look at this one team, there are many versions of my image also available, right? Likewise, team, if you go here, like everything is available here, whatever you see it. If I want to download a specific version, there is a command here called as docker pull, and the command is given to you very clearly. Copy this command and download the image, right? You could download the default official images team. If you do not see any account name in the front, that is called as a Docker official image. But if you see like this is an account name from a specific user you're trying to download, these are like a little vulnerable. We don't know that what that user is keeping it. These are the official images. You can trust them to download them onto your systems. But these are the images that you must know about the user before you download them. That may kind of some malicious software also. But of course, Docker validates everything, but ensure that you know before you download it, you know about that. This is how team you can download multiple images on your Docker host, right? This is wherever you install the Docker software team, that is called as your Docker host basically. That is simply we call it as our Docker host, right? And we'll talk about this accordingly. Now, once you download this image team, this is my sample app actually, which means that this is going to run our sample app war file application, whatever we built it yesterday. I have an image ready with that war file available for me. I'm just showing an example for that. So here it is team. Whenever you want to run this, say that Docker images is a command right now to check the images on the local. Now there are two images available in my local system team. I downloaded two images. There are two images available for me on my Docker local, right? These are the two images that are available here, right? I can run any of these image as a container team. Try to understand that this is image right now. This is just like a parked car, doing nothing, sitting on your system, right? Nothing, the engine is stopped. The Tomcat is in a stopped state. The application is not loaded anywhere. That is how the image is sitting on your machine right now. But if I want to access my Tomcat, or if I want to send a request, or if I want to load my application or access my application from the browser, I need to run it as a container, right? Now, how do I run it as a container team? I can simply use a command called as docker run -d, right? -d is called as detached mode team, and you must use your -p parameter. I'll tell you what are all these things, but just now this is the image I'm using it, which is the image name, right? And let's say that 7 is the one which is a version. Now this is how team I can simply run a container from a image that is available on your system. Let me show you that there were no container running here. The running containers can be checked out on your system with a command called as docker ps, docker processes we call it. If I see this one team, there is no containers that are running right now. But after I run this one, you must see a container running, right? See this team, it is so quick to start your application. It is so quick. Once you have your image ready, it is very quick to start your application. See that my container is up and running, right? Within a matter of seconds, I see that my container is available. Within this one, it has a Tomcat, Java, everything is available. And it is also available for me on a port number called as 32768, right? Now, if I want to access this application team, I can simply launch it. I can go to here. I can choose my IP address where I installed my Docker. I can choose my IP address, which is this machine team. I can use this IP address here. Here it is. And let's say that the port number that is exposed on your Docker host, which is 32768 site. You will understand all these things team just on the top level I'm showing you right now. If I hit it, I'll see that my Tomcat is launching. Means this is a 404 page team that is coming from the Tomcat. Let it be. Now, if I want to access my application team, I use a context of my application, which is sample app. Like this, you see that my application is launched, which means that in a matter of second, I downloaded an image. I don't know where it was built it. I really don't know where it was built it. I installed just the Docker, which is in my cloud environment. I can have my image ready somewhere else, prepared by somebody else, prepared by somewhere else, whatever it may be. Wherever you build that image, you build it and you upload to the Docker Hub. But I can take that image and I can run it anywhere. That's what Docker tells you. You can build anywhere, ship anywhere, and run anywhere. That is the slogan of your Docker. So I don't know where exactly it is built, but I'm able to run my own Docker server where I install the Docker. You can see that my application is also launched within a matter of seconds. This is how easy it is for me to run the container stream. Once the image is available, I can run as many containers as I want it. Like you have a car blueprint team. Let's say that the manufacturing of car, if you go for it, there is one blueprint of the car. with which they will produce a replicas like n number of cars with the same blueprint, right? Now your image is like a blueprint team from which we can start as many containers as I want it, which means that if I want to create one more container which is equals to another Tomcat instance or another application instance for me, I can use the same command again, which is going to create another container for me, right? Like this one team, it becomes very easy for you to run the containers. Right now, see this team, in a matter of seconds, I was able to spin up 3 instances of my application within the same server. Now, if I have to ask you to set up these 3 instances for your team without a Docker concept, you must have to go to the virtual machine and you have start installing or set up a Tomcat first of all, right? And ensure that the Tomcat is running. Then you deploy your application. You need to take care of a lot of stuff, which is not an easy task. It is possible, but it is not that easy as it is. Here it is done in couple of seconds, but where you may take about a couple of hours to achieve the same task without a Docker containerization. That is the advantages that you get it with a Docker basically. That is what is called as containerizing your application, brings a lot of advantages to move your application anywhere and to run your application with fast. That is what the goal of your DevOps again, that is what all we are expecting accordingly. Now this is about the top level team. I just show you like, how do I run a container? A Docker run is a command basically to create a container, to run a container from an existing image. We haven't learned how to build the images. We're going to learn that also, but I'm just telling that on the top level, a Docker run is a command basically using which we are going to create a container, right? That is what you -d is a detached mode team, which means that the container runs, or you just create a container and detach from the terminal so that it will run as a background process. Docker container running as a background process basically when you use a detached mode. You must mention the detached mode mandatorily when you create a container from an image always. That is what you're going to do it. Now -p is something team which publishes the port number. Try to understand team the strategy here. How do I access my application within the container? Because container is just like a runtime environment which is having a wall behind that one. Now let me show you a simple thing team here. Let's say that this is my container team or something like that. Or let's say that I have a Docker host. When I say Docker host team, I have a machine with Ubuntu OS. That's what you do it. Now on top of it, you install a Docker software. That is what you did it. Now this is the machine team I have it. This machine I call it as a Docker host basically. This is what we call it as a Docker host within which run. Now this is where team you have images stored somewhere on your system, but you're running them as containers. Let's say that this is my container that I'm running it right now, right? Try to understand team within the container you have it application. Let's say that your application war file, whatever it may be, and you have your Tomcat running within the container, and you have Java within the container, and you have your OS library within the container, right? Now this is the content of your image team or container basically, whatever you have it, which means that a Tomcat process is running within this container team. The port number is also available within this port number or within the container accordingly. Means that team, this container is an independent environment, or it is called as independent to any other system that is running on this particular host. Means if I run another container team which is having a different process altogether, let's say that I took another image maybe which is of Nginx or something. Let's say that I have my website deployed here. Let's say that index.html something. My website is deployed here within the web server, and I also have to run this website. I have something called as Nginx web server, and I have something called as OS library here again, right? Now this is how team there is this independent containers that can be run on the same servers. Now every container is an independent of other one. Every container possesses their own properties accordingly, so that one container cannot disturb other container here. Now the question is that team, once these are all independent containers, how do I access an application within the container? Is that we cannot directly access anything within the container team. That is not a default route created by the Docker. We cannot access anything within the container because team, like earlier, if you take an example of Jenkins, right, you directly install Jenkins on your machine like Docker. Now when you install it, this is running as a process on your machine, and there is a port number for your Jenkins available on the a host where you install the Jenkins, right? Now that is what available here. So you could access the IP address of your Docker host, and the port number that is running on your Docker host or any host, that is what it is. That is what you're using, right? In the browser, basically, if a process was available on your host directly, on your system directly, that is where you could access them directly with the port number that is available on the host. But when I'm running the container team, the process is running within the container because we containerize that environment. That is an independent environment for running that application itself. Within that environment team, whatever it is there, which cannot be accessed from the external world directly. Now that is where team Docker creates, or Docker help you to publish a port number onto the Docker host, which means that Docker is creating a route path like this. Now this is where team we use something called as a port number is published on your Docker host like 32678 or 768, whatever you call it. Now this is how team Docker publishes a port number, or Docker will help you to publish a port number onto the Docker host, so that a Docker host IP address and the port number that is running on the host can be utilized to access the application running within the container accordingly. Now this is the architecture flow team. This is how it will be done actually. This is how the Docker works. You just need to understand this accordingly. Now here team, again, this is what the flow, that is where we used a -p option here. If I don't use -p option, Docker will not publish any port number on the Docker host, with which you will not be able to access anything within the container again. That is the purpose team. That is how you need to understand about it here. That is the reason we must use -d is a detached mode, we call it, to run a container in a detached mode by detaching to your terminal, run in the background mode. Now -p you're using it here to publish a Docker port number on the Docker host so that we could access our application from the external world accordingly. That is where we're using it. Likewise team, whenever you use a capital P, basically Docker will allocate a port number. You can see that here there are two port numbers that will be published here like this. So this is a Docker host port number, which is redirecting to a container port number within. Now you can see that team, there are three Tomcat instances running within the container. You see the same port number is running within the container type, because every container is independent container. What is in one container will not affect what is in another container on the same host. That is the reason you could run 8080 port number with all the Docker host or with all the containers accordingly. But when they exposed onto the Docker host, there is an individual port number that you need to do it: 32768, 32769, and 32770. This is how team you have to publish a port number. On a Docker host, there will be a different port number, but within the container, there will always be a single port number, like whatever is the image is consisting of, that will always going to do it. So these three individual containers can be accessed with the different port numbers right now. 32768 I accessed it. If I use 32769, I still get the same response because that is individual container which has application in it. And 32770 also I can use it, right? So this is how team you can simply understand about. I could send a request into each individual container using its port number that is published on the Docker host always. Okay, so this is how team you can create a container in a detached mode so that it will be accessible for me. And while creating a container itself, we will publish a port number for it so that you will be able to access that port number accordingly. That is what the standard rules team, that is a standard practice that you need to do it always. That is a standard practice that you need to do it always. That is what we're going to do. Now this is where team, this is how you can understand about container, running a container, right? But if you want to know more details about a container team, because container is like an independent environment for your running application completely. Now the container possesses some features to it. It has its own networking and it has its own storage parameters. Everything can be taken care of accordingly here. Now within this one team, if I want to know more details about your Docker container, I can use a value called as a container ID team. Every container will get a unique ID when you create a container. Let's say that here I'm using it. Look at this column team. Every container will get a unique container ID, and from which image we are starting this container. That is what you see it. Now, when you see this command column team, this command column is responsible for starting the Tomcat process within the container. Like team, whenever you start your Windows machine or Linux machine, there are a default process gets started. Similar to that one, whenever somebody starts this image as a container, this command is what we're going to run it within the container. So it will start your Tomcat process, or this command is responsible for starting your Tomcat process When you run the image as a container, right, that's when we are starting our Tomcat. A Tomcat gets initialized and you will be able to access your application accordingly, right? This command setup and everything is part of your image preparation team. We will see that tomorrow mostly, but this is what all you're going to do it accordingly, right? And when it is created, whether it is up and running or not, now you see the two columns at the last, which is a ports column. The Docker publishes a port number on the Docker host, which will redirect the request into the container port number so that you would access them directly. That is what you see it. Now there is a name for your container, that is the default name. But if you would like to give your own name to the container, you could also give a name to the container accordingly, right? So this is how team you can understand about a Docker, how it works and how can you access the containers on it accordingly, right? So we can download an image from the Docker Hub, we can run it as a container in the background mode, and we can start accessing our container or applications running within the containers accordingly. That is what all we're gonna do it. Now there is some more things team. We can start the containers if I wanted. Container lifecycle team, if you're talking about a container lifecycle here, let's say that a container lifecycle says like this: it creates a container, then you start your container is running state, that's what you see it. Now container can be stopped and you can restart it if you want it. Stopped, start and restart it. Your containers can be killed also. Finally you could remove your container also. Let's say that tomorrow if I have a different version of my application, then I would build a new Docker image with a new version of the image, and then I would deploy my new version of the Tomcat or things accordingly. Let's say that team, I will show you how do I stop start. You say that you can use a Docker stop command and you can use the container ID as a reference team. See that here it is. I can give multiple container IDs also to stop them. Just a stopping team, and that's all I'm doing it. Here it is. This will stop all the containers on my system, which means that there will be no more running containers on my system accordingly. So once you do that one, we can validate whether the stops containers or not. See that team, this is stopped containers. Now I said like Docker PS is a command to check a running containers on your system, right? But if I want to check a running containers plus all the exited containers team, I can use a command called as Docker PS-a to like this one. Look at this one team, you see that all of them are in exited state right now. Status column is exited, which means they are stopped. Now if I want to start them back team, I can simply use a Docker start command with a container ID, same thing again. I can simply use a Docker start command. It will start the containers back and they will be live again. My Tomcat will be started again. So my application will be accessible again once the container has started, right? So Docker PS-a again, you see that all the containers are up and running, up, everything is up and running right now. Now you could also do a kill on the container team, since sometimes the containers may not respond to you because of the overload or many requests hit on a single container go in a stuck phase, hanged phase or hang situation, then you can kill the container if you want it. Docker kill is a command name. You can see this one like this. Look at this, right? Now this is how team you could kill a container if you would like to do it. Stop is a graceful stop, and kill is something called as a forceful kill of your container. That's what you get it. Now similarly team, you could check the logs of a container using a command called as Docker logs command. Docker logs and container ID, you can see it. If you want to follow the logs also, you can use Docker logs-f. See that it is showing you the log files of your Tomcat, what is running within the container. Within the container, there is something, it says that Tomcat server has started successfully, everything. If the Tomcat server is writing some more log here, it will directly follow the log. And it's a live log that you can see it accordingly. If I want to come out of the screen team, you can do a control C again. That's all you do it. So this is how team various commands against your containers can be performed. Means Docker run is a command to create a container, right? Docker run -d and -t to publish a port number for your container to access the container outside the world, right? That is one thing. And you also have something called as Docker start container or container ID, Docker stop container ID, Docker restart also can be used if you want it. A running container can be stopped and started with a restart command. You can use a Docker kill command to kill a container, and you can check a Docker logs command to see the logs of a container, what is inside the container, right? Similarly team, there is one more thing I can see it called as Docker inspect container ID. So it will show you much more information about a container. Basically, it is in the JSON format, like the IP address of your containers. Like containers do have their own IP addresses within, right? What are the port numbers where exactly this is running, right? User, which is inside the container, user local tomcat accordingly. Whatever the port that is within the container, exposed port number, right? You can see the status of a container team. You can see the status of a container here. So you can see that what is a container ID, a long container ID here, created time, what is a command that is running it. The command column here team does not show the full command which you're using it, but here you can look at the full command here, user local tomcat bin catalina.sh run, which is what it is starting my tomcat process within the container. Now the status of the container is running, right? It is om killed. In case of out of memory comes up here, you can see the error. The process ID for your container, because container is also a process on your system, simply it gets also process ID. Likewise team, there are many more information about the container. You can look at it using a command called as a docker inspect, and the container ID will give you a lot of information about individual container accordingly. Now this is the life cycle of a container team. You run a container, which means that you create a container, you start the container, you can stop the container, you can restart the container, you could kill the container. Let's say that now I want to remove a container completely. I do not want it anymore on my system because I have a new version of my application team, so that I need to download my latest version of application and run it. I want to, let's say that docker rm-f, you can use a container ID here that will remove your container from the system accordingly, right? So this is how team you can do it. Docker ps, there is no container running here. If you want to look at it, docker ps-a, there is one container with an exited state. I could remove that also. Docker rm-f, this one. Now why am I removing this containers team? Because we do not upgrade the versions within the tomcat images again. We have to prepare a new image to download it, right? Let's say that if I have my application version team latest version, consider that I would prepare a new version image, like which is a 7th right now. I could download a 8th version similarly. Let's say that docker pull. So this is how you could download a latest version of your Docker image and run the latest image, right? Whenever you were changing the versions team, do not think like you would update within the container. Container changes are temporary always. We should not update anything in the inside containers. We must prepare a new image with a new version of the application always, and then run the new image as a new containers again always. That is a standard of follow, the standard way of deploying your containers into various environments. Whenever a new version of application is available, you always prepare a different page for it. You can see that now there is a same image, a sample app is the same application, but there is a 7th version of my application and there is 8th version of my application. So whenever there is a new version of application comes up, prepare a new image altogether. Don't try to update something within the same existing containers. No, that is not recommended, or that is not the way that you use of containers accordingly. So this is how team you could understand about what is Docker, then how do I run a container when I have a Docker image with me, simple one, right? So I could run a container in a detached mode with a publishing port number so that I could access my container within the, within outside of the public or from the browser basically. This is how team we can use a containerization, right? It will ease our task to deploy our containers across multiple environments or across multiple clouds or multiple data centers. Wherever you want to run your application, that will be easy for you to ship it and run it. That's what the slogan of your token also says: build anywhere, ship anywhere, and run anywhere. That is what the slogan team that we have it. That will ease out your application deployment process completely. You need not to worry about the underlying infrastructure where I'm running the containers, because Docker is there to take about underlying infrastructure. You just have to worry about what is within the container, within the Docker image, how you are running your application. That's all you need to worry accordingly. Now this is about it team. This is about it accordingly. The simple introduction about your Docker. That is what all I'm telling it, right? So this is where team I would stop for today, and we just had an introduction to the Docker. How do I run the containers? We saw it, but tomorrow we're going to see it. How do I prepare my images and how do I run my images in a production scenario? We will try to understand about it. Okay. So this is where I'll stop team, and I'll be open for your questions. If there are any questions that you have it, you can ask it right now. We will try to answer all of your questions accordingly.
Hi Naresh.
Hello. Hi.
Thank you very much for the session. I have a question. All the Ansible and Docker thing which you install seems like the system connected to the internet, right? It's in a private network and it's not directly connected with the outside world. So
Right.
do you need to download the file, like installation file or
Yeah.
something?
Right. So for everything, right, you will have an installation file. They're like a .exe file that you do on Windows machines. For Ansible or for Tomcat, or you always have the installation files will be available. You download them from a prior, like you just copy them to the target servers and then start installation instruction according to your requirement. Yes, you do that one. We download the installable files before, and we'll copy them to the target machine and we'll start installing them accordingly.
All right. And one more thing, the GitHub and the stuff which we were using yesterday. So is it free? I mean, free. Is there any kind of limitation how much stuff we can store in there?
Oh, on the GitHub, basically it meant for the source code. So you should not store any large files. It will not allow you to store a large files there. But as long as it is a source code, it can be around up till 1 GB to 2 GB that will accept it without any question. Like multiple
Okay.
repositories can be created. There is no restriction on that, how many repositories that you created. As long as it is public, they will not say anything. If you maintain some private repositories also, they will put something accordingly. Okay.
Okay. Just the last one, with this playbook thing, you were defining at the start of the playbook, you were switching to the user root, right?
Correct.
So if we have to keep on switching the users, different users, like in a system, we can have multiple users, right? So if
Correct.
we're writing a playbook, we need to keep on jumping from one user to another user.
Correct.
So that should be possible, right?
Yeah, that's what it is, right? So let's say that there are set of tasks that I have it. Now you need to define which task need to be run with which user, right? That is what your requirement. Let's say that when you're writing a set of instructions, I want to run, let's say that first two instruction need to be run as a different user. Second two instruction need to be run as a different user. That's all you need to do. Right? So how do I switch is that? Means if you mention here, now entire things will be running as your root user. But if I want to switch to this particular task as a different user, like I defined at the bottom, if you see it, there is something called as this particular task will run it as a Tomcat user, right?
So the thing is,
Likewise,
I understand, I get that. But here on the remote end, we only copied the ID rsa.pub for the Ansible user, right?
that
So
is for the automation. First of all, you should be able to log in as some user, and from that
okay.
user, you must switch to the other user. That is the only way that you must have set up for the first login purpose. After you log in, the Ansible user have necessary permission to switch to other user. That permission need to be given to your Ansible user accordingly. That is the way you need to take it.
All right. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much, Naresh.
Sure.
Hello, Naresh.
Hi.
Yeah, this is Manoj. I have a few questions on Docker actually. So my question is, you said, the application, the Java application, you had two versions, like 7 and 8. So you implemented the first one. I mean, deployed the first one.
Correct.
And you said, we can remove it. So let's say it's an application with the database and or that storage and that kind of stuff. So if you remove that, what happens to that data? I mean, is there any data loss will happen?
Okay.
If
Good
you want
question.
to deploy the new one.
Correct. That's a good question. First of all, let me tell you that. Like what I say that whenever I run a container, whatever is within the container is temporary, right? So when I remove
Okay.
the container, the whatever is within the container, I will lose it. In this case, like I was checking the Tomcat log files that were within the container itself. When I remove the container, the log files that were there, everything is lost for me. But there is a way that you can persist the storage by using a Docker volumes concept. So you could write the data outside of the container completely, so that if you remove the container, you would not lose the data. You can regain the data, or whenever you start a process again, that can retain that data again.
Okay.
The concept is that volume, you can go for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. And one more thing, Is it a DevOps engineer's responsibility to build an image, application image, or is it the developer who has to do it?
It is the DevOps engineer utility mostly, because a DevOps engineer is responsible, or he knows how the production environment will be, right? Developer knows only the developer environment mostly, but the image should be running in your production environment mostly. So what exactly the statistic, or you need to get the dependencies from the Docker developer. Basically, you help him build the image, or you need to build the image. Most of the time, DevOps engineers are the one who builds the images. Developers are very much busy in writing the code and then throwing the code to the GitHub. We build the war
So
files or whatever it may be, and then you build a Docker image along with your Docker war file that you want to do it. That may be automated
so
within the CI/CD pipeline.
okay, so I heard you will be telling that how to run, I mean, build an image tomorrow, right?
Yeah, I'll be doing that tomorrow mostly. Yeah.
Okay, just one more question, last question. What about the security of the Docker images which is available in the public? You said there are vulnerable images.
Right. Okay, so there is
So
something tagged, first of all, within the Docker Hub, there are some images called as official Docker images, which means that they're all certified by your Docker. Let's say that when I go for this one, you can see that verified publisher here. Similar to that one,
okay.
if I say Nginx, there are some things which are official image. When I say official image here, which means that this is certified and validated by the Docker, then Docker has uploaded into the Docker Hub. Likewise, if you see below, basically there is nothing but official image. This is likewise used by a normal user like you and like me. There are many users, because this is a public person, normal users are uploading it. You do not trust the normal users images, but trust the official images that will be taken care safely without any issues. Okay.
Okay, so in Docker, do you have a paid account where you can completely rely on a secure image?
This is within this one, you could create a private repository here. Let's say that this is my account. Once I create it, since these are all public, these are all repositories which I created within my account, which is Learn DevOps, my project. You have an option to create a repository here. It says that public or private. If you choose a private, they will start charging you. You have to be very careful. They will charge you. If you make it public, they don't charge you. That's all about it.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. If you want to set up a repository behind your firewall within your organizations, there are many container repositories. We have it like Docker provides official thing called as DTR, Docker Trust Registry. There are many other solutions like JFrog is one of the containers you can use. JFrog is Artifact earlier, but .jfrog is also supporting the container registries right now. You can use various technologies for storing your Docker images within your organization. You don't need to rely on the Docker Hub at all. Okay.
All right. Okay, thank you.
Great. Yeah. Yes. Any other questions?
Hi, Naresh. One question, basically, like how does this Ansible differ from the SCCM in general? Like SCCM and Ansible is totally completely different, or there any kind of a
SCCM is for Windows that you use it, right? You push your software, everything on that. That's what you do, right?
Yeah.
So it is not much difference. SCCM is your configuration management tool, also I'll call it, that is used especially for pushing your Windows updates and everything that you use within your organizations, right?
Yeah.
That's what. But see here, it is a wide this configuration management tool. There you use it for SCCM works only for the Windows based systems. There is no way it will work out it. But this tool is global tool, like any type of operating system on the target. It doesn't care. You can simply log in from controller machine. I can talk into a Ubuntu system or a Red Hat or a Linux, or let's say that a Windows machine also, and I can start installing my software, or can do whatever I want it. Now this is like mostly used as at a production scale. We use this one for application related stuff, but as your SCCM is usually specifically used for only for the Windows updates or within your organization, that is the only purpose. Your IT team uses that one most of the time, but a real production application uses, we use this configuration management tools such as Ansible or Puppet, which is a realistic use case for your production deployment like this one. Otherwise, both are the same purpose. We call it as configuration management.
Yeah, got it. Thanks, Naresh, and thanks. And the one more question that I had is like when we created one image and when we keep on running with a command, Docker run command, and you ran 3 containers, right? But we created only one image, but we using the same image we spin up 3 containers. That's what we did, right? In your
Correct.
yeah.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Like as I told, right, one car blueprint and you will produce many cars with it because everybody uses different. So here it is, right? Every instance of a container equal to one instance of your Tomcat application or application instance. In a production scenario, why would we create multiple instances, right? If I have one container, if I one container is well, my application will not be accessible, right? In that case, I'll go for installing or setting up multiple instances. If one of my container goes down, the other instance will be available, that my application will be highly available. So that one image, multiple containers or many containers we call it. From one image we can create thousands of containers based on your application requirement. The runtime instances will be many. It is just like a replica, right? Just like image is same thing and replicating the same for multiple instances, so that you will have multiple high availability for your application by sending a request into multiple instances of your containers. That is the purpose.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Naresh. Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking that the final question. Sorry. The final question one that regarding when we instruct, right? Like suppose the Jenkins is also running on the port, and if I am also instructing Tomcat, it will not allow to run on the same port. So this also can be configured on the YAML file, right? Or is there
The
I mean,
port number you mean to say? The Tomcat port number you want to configure something like that?
yeah. Yeah. Correct. Yeah.
See, it is like configurable, but you must write your configuration prior. Basically, let's say that if I go to just for an example, if you're seeing my screen, right? Let's say that opt Tomcat conf is a folder where you have a Tomcat configuration always, right? Within that, there is something called as server.xml, right? This server.xml is a default file that has the port number of your Tomcat by default, correct? If you see this, there is something 8080 comes up somewhere, right? So here it is, the default port number, right? Now, when the default installation has a default server.xml, in such case, what you do is that you write your own server.xml and copy over that. Once you install it, you copy over server.xml and start up with your own server.xml. Like configurations need to be configured or altered according. Not the direct port number configurable, means if you want to modify the port number directly using a shell command, however you want to configure it, yes, you can write another task within the playbook which will change my port number of the Tomcat, whether you modify an existing file or you want to create a new file altogether with your new port number and new configurations. However you want to do it, you do it. The answer is yes, from the YAML file, we can configure things, but you must know how to do it according to your requirement. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Naresh. Thanks.
Yeah, welcome. Yes. Anybody else?
More question. This is Manoj. So can we expect something, a web and database application? So we can come to know, how it stores the data outside the container.
Okay, you want me to show you how do you store the data outside of the container? Is that what you wanted?
Yeah.
So let's say that
That's
there
what.
is an application that talks to a database. Application stores the data onto database, and the database stores the data onto a disk. Even if I
Yeah.
remove the database container, when I restart my database instance of the container, it will restore the data from the disk. Is that
Yes,
what you
that's.
wanted?
Yeah. Is it
Great.
possible you can?
Yeah, I'll show you that tomorrow. No problem at all.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll use some example there. I'll try to get that done for you. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. Yes. Any other questions you have?
Hello.
Okay. Yeah.
Hi, Naresh, Bala here. I have
Yeah.
a couple of questions.
Mhm.
One is that we are pulling the image from the repository, right? The hub, right? So
Mhm.
once that is done, is there any ways that we can see what is there um, in the image through the command prompt here?
See, when you are downloading the image directly, it may not show all the details for sure, but there is one command that will help you to understand about the image. Let's say that Docker images, right? When you don't know anything about this image, we normally run a command called as docker inspect, right? And you can give your image name. So it will show you some information about this, but this is provided again who build the image based on the build of image. They might put some meta information or you may not put it. If they put it, it will show you the information. Let's say that here in this case, we see that there is something called as Tomcat is using here. The Tomcat is installed in this particular directory, right? This is what we can understand it, but we don't know like Tomcat version. Like you can see that everything is there, OpenJDK 11 here. This is how you could understand it. Again, this depends on the build information. Like while I'm building a Docker image, if I add this information, that will be visible to you. If not, you cannot understand anything. Other way around is that you can run it as a container and you can get inside a running container. I did not tell you how do I get inside a running container. We can go inside a running container. We can validate what are all the things which are having within the container accordingly. That we'll be seeing tomorrow mostly. I'll show you how do I get inside a running container, run the image as a container, go inside the container, and then validate whatever you want it accordingly. That's where you can come to know whatever is within the image also, because image and container has the same thing, right? Always.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And also we can modify the downloaded image before running it as a container. Is that possible?
No, Docker images are not modifiable. Docker images are immutable, we call it. When you modify an image, that will not overwrite an existing image, but instead you could create a new image from it. Means that when you run it as a container, maybe within the container you make some changes maybe, but Docker images are not directly editable. Okay, there is no way that you can edit a Docker image directly. That is not possible. Even if you think to edit them, actually you must run it as a container and get inside a container. You do modifications there. Now the container things, whatever the container, the changes will be inside the container temporary. So you can commit the container changes into a new Docker image. The existing will be as it is, and you get a new Docker image accordingly. So the Docker images are immutable actually. They cannot be modified once they created. You have to build a new image with the old structure again, or you have to run it as a container, modify the things, and build a new image from the changes you did again. It is always that you have to prepare a new image. Even if you want to make a single change, you must prepare a new image again. That is not existing images are not modifiable.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Thanks, Ron.
Thank you. Yes. Any other questions? Anybody? Okay, so great team. I think you're all good, I believe. So thank you so much again. So have a great day ahead. We'll see you tomorrow again with more content on the Docker, and we'll proceed with the next things accordingly. Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Naresh. Thanks, man.
Thank you so much,
Naresh.
everybody.
Thank you, Naresh.
Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you.